stumble at the start, the rest of the journey becomes an arduous uphill battle.
Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines.
In its 39-year history, this marathon race has brought tough men to their knees while carrying others to racing glory. This event attracts drivers from every walk of life, including stock car superstars like Stewart, Petty, and rookie sensation Kevin Harvick, as well as open-wheel veterans and former Rolex champions. In the next 24 hours, anybody has a shot at walking away with the most prestigious sports car title in North America, Rolex 24 champion. In the early weeks of February, the coastal community of Daytona Beach, Florida truly becomes the world center of racing. Speed Weeks, as it is known, begins now. As racing representatives, the elite from some 20 countries come ashore to take on America's best in one of the world's truly great sports car racing classics. Hi everybody, and welcome to Speed Vision's live coverage of the 40th anniversary Rolex 24 at Daytona. I'm Greg Kramer, joined in the booth by David Hobbs and Derek Bell. Down in the pits, Calvin Fish and Guy Hobbs will be covering all the action. And David, this is a race so rich in tradition, so rich in history, and you've been a part of that history.
Well, Greg, I was fortunate enough, or old enough, whichever way you look at it, to be here 40 years ago for the first running of what was then the Daytona 3-hour, and a tremendous variety of drivers. Bill France Sr. got 50 cars here, which was a terrific lineup for the very first race. Some great drivers, Sterling Moss from England, Jimmy Clark from England, who was about to be one of the greatest drivers of all time. From American road racing, you had Phil Hill, you had Dan Gurney, you had Walt Hangsgren, you had a whole plethora of them. And of course from NASCAR, you of course had Fireball Roberts, Joe Weatherly. Yeah. So you had NASCAR drivers here right from the beginning. Now I just happen to have a copy of the results here, and unfortunately I see that David Hobbs finished 45th out of the 50, but dead last was one AJ Foyt, who only managed 2 laps out of the 3-hour.
One finds one's successes where they can.
Yes, exactly, one does.
Speaking of success here, of course, Derek, you've had 3 overall wins here. And another thing this event is known for is bringing former champions back once they've had a taste of it.
Well, you know, there's 2 big 24-hour races in the year. One's the Le Mans 24-hour, the other's Daytona 24-hour. And when you always want to win it. When you've won the Daytona 24-hour, you want to win it twice and more times. And that's really very important. You've got Hurley Haywood here, who's actually won the race 5 times. Loads of them have won it twice and 3 times. Very important to get on that little list of very special drivers that have won it numerous times.
As a matter of fact, 14 previous winners back this year to give it another try. Now, of course, being Daytona Beach and Daytona International Speedway, that means NASCAR country, and there's a very strong representative, as always, from that community here to try their hand at things. You've got Tony Stewart, Derek Cope, who actually was a class winner here in '91, the year after he won the 500. Robbie Gordon, a slew of class wins here. Kyle Petty, his 3rd start here. Wally Dallenbach, a great road racer as well. And Kevin Harvick, who absolutely shone in qualifying. And we'll talk about that just a little bit more. But one of the things that we've seen this year as well is, perhaps more than any in recent memory, this is wide open.
Well, of course, the last 2 years, a GTS car has won this race overall. And if you just take the top 8 qualifiers yesterday, there are 7 different types of car and 5 different makes of engine. And they're still only covered by a 2nd and 3/4. So this race, to me, looks to be absolutely wide open.
However, of course, as always, the first gauntlet to be thrown is qualifying. We're going to show you right now the pole sitters, the top qualifiers in the 5 classes here. And not always the most important thing to be fast in a 24-hour race, but this at least gives people an idea of who they're going to be chasing. Another thing, tremendous driver lineups in so many of these cars, and one of those lineups is down on the grid right now, and of course Calvin Fish has found them. Welcome, Cal.
Thanks, Greg. Well, it was 1998 Daytona winner Didier Taze who took the pole in this Dallara jet. And we're going to break in here. Kevin Durant has given his drivers some last-minute instructions. But Didier, it's been 2 years since we last saw an SRP car really get to the front after 24 hours. You certainly have the speed this weekend. Does this car have the durability?
When you get the speed, at least you can, have some cushion underneath your foot. And that's what we hope to have this weekend. I think the equipment compared to the last 2 years, it's better. Better cars, better equipment, better prepare. I think the sports car will be on the front this year.
Okay, well, hopefully they can make it to the front of the end of 24 hours. They've got a stellar driver lineup here. Joining Didier will be Freddie Lienhardt, Mauro Baldi, he won here in 1998. And who can forget the run that Max Pappas had in 1996? We've got Max here on the grid as well. Max, Daytona certainly brought out the magic in you in 1996. Can you do it again this year?
Absolutely. I think we've got a great team. Didier, Mauro, Fred is providing us the tool to do a great job with the Lista car. So I'm very confident and comfortable.
Okay, well, good luck the rest of the way. Well, certainly the last 2 years has sprung some surprises with the overall winner. Guy Hobbs, there's potential for that to happen again this year.
Yes, Calvin, there certainly is. I am with the pole sitter from the GTS class, Paul Gentilozzi, who will be driving the Jaguar alongside fellow American Scott Pruitt. Paul, you've won this thing before back in 1994. Can you do it in this GTS car?
Oh, I think we can. I mean, our goal is to win GTS. If we get lucky enough and the LMP cars have a problem, we could win overall.
The car is very fast. Can it endure the 24 hours?
We came here for the test, and it's been remarkably durable. Luck is what wins Daytona. We just don't know if we have luck yet.
All right. You helped out with a very strong driver lineup with Brian Simo and Scott Pruitt. Scott, you won this race in 1992 in a Jaguar. Can you win it again?
Yes, we can. I got to say hi to my family at home, but yes, we can. This is one of those races, if you look at Paul, myself, Brian, Michael, all a lot of experience, Trans Am Championships, won this race before. A lot of it goes into preparation. The Jaguar has been very, very strong, and with a little bit of luck, we can come home in victory circle.
All right, Scott Pruitt has 5 wins here at Daytona in this racing classes and overall. They'll be joined by Michael Lauer in the car. Back up to you, Greg.
Thanks very much, Guy. Experience plays such a huge role in this event. And of course, as we kick off the racing season for 2001, we'll be right back here at Daytona. Sun breaking through a little bit down on the starting grid. A lot of people down there, and of course, Calvin and Guy are among them. Let's go down to Cal.
Well, Greg, possibly the biggest surprise in qualifying was the performance of this Ascari Judd, driven by Lutberger, Toivonen, and American TJ Bell. But up on the second row of the grid, we've got the Crawford chassis. It's really the only works entry in the SRP field, and it's got a great stellar lineup as well. Jan Lammers, he won here in 1990. We've got Johnny Mollem, he's been a standout in Porsche Cup racing. We're going to have a chat here with Tony Stewart, who's obviously getting a lot of attention here this weekend. Tony, if we can break in for a second, mate. Big month for you here, the 500 coming up, a lot of intensity with that. Is this an enjoyable way to start the month?
It's a lot of fun. I've got 2 great teammates with Johnny and Jan, and Max Crawford and his family have poured their hearts and souls into this car. So it's been fun to be in the final stages of their dream of building this race car, and it's been a lot of fun learning how to be a road course racer.
Okay, well, good luck today, Tony. On the third row of the grid, we have the Dyson Racing entry. Now, these boys have been on the pole the last 3 years, but the last time they won was back in 1999. And in fact, that was when they actually started from 5th place on the grid. We're going to try and get a chat here with James Weaver. He's actually in another interview right now. As you can tell, we're in live TV, but Butch is here. Butch Leitzinger, you boys have a great record when you start 5th here at Daytona. You won in 97 and 99. Can you make it another one here this weekend?
I didn't know that, actually. That's good to know. We certainly can. The car's been great. The crew's done a fantastic job getting everything together. Benny Lozano has worked on the pistons, which has been our major downfall the last 2 years. And, in theory, everything's going good, but, there's so many variables, and, if James and Ollie and I can keep it from out of the fence and out of the other cars, I think we have a good chance.
2 Brits sharing the car with you. What's that all about?
Well, that's a pretty unfortunate circumstance, actually. I don't know how I got thrown in with them. The other car's all Americans. I don't know why I was excluded from them. But I think we'll just make do with what we have.
All right, mate, best of luck. Let's go back to Guy Helps further down on the grid.
Well, Calvin, you mentioned the weather's changed. The sun is shining, and it's nice and warm out here now. Someone else who's made a change for the year 2002 is Terry Borschuller, and Terry's right here. A bit of bad news, though. Terry, you tell me you're not feeling very well today.
I'm feeling a lot better today. I thought yesterday it was probably the worst time that somebody could get sick, but I'm glad I feel better today. Yesterday I was not good.
Plenty of fluids, mate. Now, the change I just mentioned, you're going to be running in an SRP2 car this weekend. How's that feel?
It's great. The car is fantastic. We've been doing a lot of testing, and the team's really, really good. And we're ready for the race. We're here to beat ourselves. That's about all we can do.
Well, hopefully you can give us as much entertainment as you did yesterday in that great Grand Am Cup race. Unfortunately, lost it on the last lap there, but a great race and great entertainment. Thanks, Terry.
Thanks, guy. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll go back to Calvin now.
Well, it's always great to see one of these Ferraris in the field, and David Brabham drove this car last year with Alan McNish, and you certainly gave the Riley and Scotts a run in the early going. Did you learn anything from that? The car didn't finish. You're going to have a different strategy this year?
We had a great race last year with the Dyson car, and we probably pushed each other a little bit too much, but there's a lot of cars here that can win this race. We know what we have to do, so I'm driving the most gorgeous car on the grid, so I'm really looking forward to it. The team have done a fantastic job preparing the car, and we just have to go out there and just do the job.
Okay, well, good luck the rest of the way. And he'll be joined by Eric Vanderpool. He qualified the car, thus he'll be starting. And also Stefan Johansson. He's won the 24 Hours at Le Mans. He's driven for Ferrari in Formula One and driven sports car for Ferrari. He's looking for another victory here this weekend.
Thanks very much, Calvin. There's a look at some of the cars a little bit further back in the pack, obviously. One of those very colorful Marco LM machines.
Winston Cup, and now he's making a name for himself in the Grand Am sports car. It's Kevin Harvick, and he qualified his car very, very quickly in the AGT class. Kevin, how's it feel for you to be driving out here on the road course? Obviously, you find it quite nice.
Yeah, this Tim Fleece car has been great with Craig Conway and all the guys helping us out. It's pretty neat experience. I get to the end of the trial and want to go straight, though, so sometimes I get confused. But we're having a good time. Everybody from Remax has gave us a great opportunity, and we're just looking to have a good time and finish the race is the main thing.
Do you find this is maybe like a good way to warm up for the next couple of weeks?
Well, that's really why I came down and did it. Just something with a lot less pressure and just an atmosphere that I can have a really good time in. And I've got some good teammates in Rick Corelli and John Metcalf and Dave Liniger. So we're here to have a good time, but we're also here, we're all competitive, so we're here to try and do this as well as we can. So we'll see what happens.
All right, good luck to you. Of course, Kevin, kind of anxious after the long winter to get out into a car and get racing again. And another guy that's anxious to get racing again is also just loitering right around the corner here, a name we're all very familiar with, and we see a lot, and races every single kind of car and every single kind of racing series. And as Boris said, Boris, you're pumped up for this one?
Oh yeah, I love 24-hour races because, you know, we've been sitting home all winter doing nothing, so it's good to come down to Florida and run around a little bit.
Now, if you have a very quick time, tell us what races are you doing this year? Because, I mean, you're competing in everything, right?
Well, right now I'm going to do the whole year in the Trans Am Series with the Applied Computer Solutions car, and then the whole Speed Vision World Challenge with the AER car, and then 3 Winston Cup races right now with Jasper, the Brickyard and the 2 road races. And unfortunately, BMW pulled out of the American Le Mans Series, so we're out of there, but hopefully I'll pick something else up.
I'm sure you will, and if he doesn't, I know where we can find Boris a little later on. Calvin has more down on the other end of pit lane.
Well, we've caught up with Stefan Johansson here. Stefan, we mentioned the fact you've won the 24 Hours of Le Mans. You've driven a Ferrari sports car before. At this stage of the weekend, a driver typically has that feel for whether the car can make it. What is your feeling about the race car this weekend?
Well, we've been feeling good about it since we started, really. You know, I think we haven't been the quickest, but we haven't attempted to be the quickest either. So we're going to try to stay disciplined and stay out of trouble more than anything else. And just, you know, it's tough to make it to the end here, real tough. Harder than any of the other long-distance races, I think. So if we make it to the end, I think we're in with a good shot.
Well, good luck, mate.
Thank you.
Well, always a Porsche will be a factor in any endurance event, and back on the 4th row of the grid, we do have that champion Lola Porsche, and the man who's behind the wheel for the second stint today will be Hurley Haywood. Hurley, you've won this event 5 times. What about a 6?
Well, I'm sure hoping for a 6. We've got the car, we've got the crew, and we've got the driver. So if Lady Luck sits on our shoulder, we should do all right. Any problems this weekend? We had an axle problem in the night practice, so we reverted back to a locker, which we can get back to the pits then. And it changed the handling, but it actually changed the handling for the better. So we're looking in pretty good shape.
Well, sometimes those brakes will actually work in your favor, guys. And champion Lola team certainly think they're in good shape. Porsche power plant and drivetrain always going to be a factor here at Daytona.
Known for reliability, I think that could be absolutely key. And by the way, if Stefan Johansson does manage to win here, he joins a very august group of people who've won Le Mans, Sebring, and Daytona, so we hope for that. One thing I wanted to address is the fact we hear a lot of people saying, well, you know, you don't have to be the fastest and all that. What do you have to do to win here in terms of driving?
Well, you want to ask Derek that because he's the guy that's won more of these 24-hour races than I can think of. Obviously, you've got to be good. The team, of course, is just so key. And as we've already heard from Paul Gentilozzi, you've got to be lucky.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important. People talk about driving flat out the whole time, and then they say, but endurance races aren't like that. These guys are going to drive flat out, but they'll have detuned the engine. They'll be running at 9,000 revs instead of 10,000. They'll be running at less boost than they normally run in qualifying because they need the endurance. But the driver themselves will be on the limit the whole way. So don't expect to see any quarter drawn anywhere. They'll be going for it.
But you are at the same time, you know, you're going flat out, but you really are still trying to baby the car a little bit.
So obviously the job for the drivers as hard as ever just to get those cars up to speed, and that's going to happen in just a few minutes.
The Grand Marshal of the 2002 Rolex 24 at Daytona, Mr. Phil Hill.
Drivers, start your engines.
And with those famous words, ladies and gentlemen, by a famous race driver, These 72 cars and drivers in 5 divisions of racing in the ground.
You heard track announcer Bill Bowser say, famous racing driver indeed, Phil Hill, won this event in 1964, and of course, America's first ever Formula One world champion, and it stood for some 17 years. But we are ready to go 24-hour racing. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. To the Porsche track map. Derek, you drove this in the HSR, the historic enduro, yesterday.
Yes, I certainly did. 3.56 miles of very fast circuit, obviously the 2 bankings on the east and west end. Braking very possible at turn 1, turn 3, braking just after the kink, braking into the chicane, severe G-forces as they go around the eastern curve. A lot of forces through the driver, through the car. It's quite hard on the drivers. Just under 200 miles an hour top speed, average of 125 pole position. A very difficult track, but very demanding, and one that we all love to win.
All love to win indeed. And speaking of which, let's take a look at our starting lineup. We introduced you to the pole qualifiers in the 5 classes. Calvin alluded to the big surprise that number 49, Judd Ascari of the young South African Werner Lupberger, only a 10th off of Didier Tays in qualifying. If you take a look at some of the others, though, we mentioned in GTS the Jag, but let's not forget the 00 Porsche GT1. 2 Canadians, David Everingham and Richard Spinard, incredibly quick. They've been showing some good form. In the SRP2 division, Anthony Lazzaro took the Rand Racing Nissan Lola to the pole, some 9 spots clear of the next SRP2 car, the Archangel number 22. Now that's going to close up. In AGT, the number 29 Mustang, built and qualified by Irv Hare, set a new track record, but only 2 spots behind Kevin Harvick in that number 90 Fleece Corvette. So a good story there. In GT, it separated out a little bit. The very talented Portuguese driver, João Barbosa, took the number 24 Mosler MT900 to the pole, 9 spots clear of the next GT car, the first of the Porsches, in the hands of World Challenge Touring standout Hugh Plum, doing a great job. And right behind him, though, the fastest of the V8 BMW M3s. And of course, the field, very large, some 72 cars. And you look back through the pack, you always think in the GT division, certainly Porsche reliability. We've got some more of the grid to show you, but I wanted to make one point here very quickly. So much of this race occurs at night, unlike Le Mans. That has its own, really, trials and tribulations.
Well, it certainly makes life very much more difficult for the very fast drivers. It makes it difficult for the slower guys because they've got to keep watching the mirror all the time. And as you said, there's so many hours of darkness here. And as Derek already said, there's a lot of corners compressed into just 3.5 miles, unlike Le Mans, which is 8 miles. You got 73 cars here as opposed to 50 at Le Mans. It makes a big difference in the traffic.
It's so difficult to look in your mirror and pick out the distance the car is behind. We've got less lights this year. Obviously on the circuit, we're going to be able to see, the driver's going to have to see where they're going rather than have artificial light. Very important.
Speaking of seeing where they're going, you're going to be able to do that as well, as we have some great onboard looks we're going to provide. You're going to show you a couple right now. The first of them is going to be the number 35 Zip Racing Porsche. Jerry Green will be starting that car, starting in the 63rd spot. So a great look coming up through the pack. We're also going to be on board the number 33 Ferrari of Washington. Ferrari, Court Wagner starts 54th. Bill Oberlin among the drivers of that machine. Then we move up to the number 66 GT Racers Group Porsche. Kevin Buckler is going to be starting in that one. Also the number 53 GTS Team Seattle Saleen. Now that is the 07. We weren't sure we were going to have that car for you, and it's up. That's the 07 G&W BMW powered Pichio in the SRP2 division. Now we'll take a look at the number 53 GTS car. That's the Team Seattle Saleen, one of the beautiful S7Rs. Don Kidd starting in the 37th spot. Then we are going to be on board with Kevin Harvick in the number 90 AGT Fleece Corvette, and he's going to be giving us a good ride as he comes up through the pack as well. We'll also be on board as we get a good look there at Kevin starting in the 21st spot. The Rand Racing Lola, the pole sitter in SRP2. That's the number 8 entry, and that right there is Anthony Lazzaro, who put that car on pole with a great effort, 17th overall. We'll also be on board the number 38 champion Lola Porsche, car you can never count out. Anthony Wallace starts in the 8th spot. Andy Wallace, of course, a winner of both Daytona, Sebring, and Le Mans, one of the very few who's achieved that great accomplishment. And also number 13, the Risi Competizione Ferrari, Eric Van de Poele, starting in the 6th spot. Another great lineup there. And I think if you have to pick a favorite, people might be tilting toward that Risi entry just a little bit. So what we want to do now, though, is get back down now to the pit area for some last thoughts from the guys in the pits. Calvin?
Well, there's certainly going to be a lot of competition out there over the next 24 hours, but not so much with the tyre companies. There's now a spec tyre for all 5 classes, SRP1, GTS, and American GT. Those fields will be shot on Goodyears and SRP2 and GT on the Dunlop tyre. And what it means is each tire company has only brought 3 tires with them, 1 wet weather compound and 2 dry, and it's going to get very cool overnight, a lot cooler than we had over the last couple of days, so that'll be certainly be a factor tonight. Let's get down to Guy Hobbs.
Thanks, Calvin. One other thing I noticed over this weekend is the crowd on hand. Seems to be much larger than normal. They keep adding seats here to Daytona, but they keep filling them up here for the 24-hour. And then the paddock area and garage area, also a very big crowd. And I think that's probably a reflection on some of the drivers that are showing up here this weekend. Back up to you, Greg.
Thanks very much, Guy. We want to remind all of our viewers that the Rolex 24 at Daytona is interactive with our Speed Vision viewers in a couple of different ways. To email us here in the broadcast booth, go to speedvision.com and click on the link to submit your question or comment. Keep a watch out as well for Speedline. Now that's going to be selected email messages that'll appear at the bottom of your screen at various times throughout our coverage. And in a new feature this year, race director, Grand Am race director Mark Raffoff is also going to be available live to answer your questions in regard to rules and race procedures that might come up. There's a good look at Mark way up here in the perch overlooking this beautiful speedway. Guy mentioned new seats being added. Seating capacity for every seat here when full is 168,000 people, and of course that doesn't include the capabilities here in the grandstand. This race, of course, because it's there's more people down watching around the road course and everything, did a little different look to it, but boy, some unbelievable viewing here as well.
And those guys, what's that other game they play over here? Football or something? Yeah. Super Bowl tomorrow, they reckon 77,000 is a good crowd. You can sit 168,000 in. You can sit 168,000, put another 100,000 in infield. Exactly. Now that's a crowd.
Now that's a crowd, and people do tend to forget that motorsports, in terms of attendance, spectator attendance, is the highest in the world when you factor in all the events. Oh, easily, no question about it. Field right now working on their second. This is actually the true pace lap, and you can see there's your front row, Didier Taze, that beautiful Dallara Judd, that number 27 entry on pole.
This is that awful rock and a hard place part of the race. You can see those 4 cars absolutely within spitting distance of each other. They know there's 24 hours to go, and they know they've got to be careful. They know they've got to be sensible. They know they've got to finish this race, and they also know that they jolly well want to be into turn 1 first. Isn't that right, Derek?
There's nothing like leading the first lap. It's so important that by the end of the race, everybody's forgotten who led the first lap, and that's what, as a driver, your discipline has to be, to really be disciplined about it. So many of these drivers out there have been very nervous about this race, because it's those that can conserve the car and have mechanical sympathy that I think is going to be the key point to the result of this race.
Now, just in case everybody thought it was a mistake there, just going by that chicane, bypass the chicane on this, the last of the pace lap.
All right, and this time they are going to start to form up, but when they come by, we expect a green flag. And to take you to that green flag, we now do want to join Grand Am race director Mark Raffoff in race control to bring the pace car around.
All right, safety car, you're looking good, you're looking good. You got a bit of a gap, about 5 rows back, but they're catching up. Catching up, keep that pace, good pace. Stay out as long as you can.
Pace car copy.
Looking good, looking good. Don't pull ahead, just keep that starter. Don't forget, you want to bring them down late. You got one coming in the pits, pace car behind you, watch out.
Pace car copy.
You got him, Start. Good job.
And while up front, Didier Taze leads them into the Rodriguez hairpin, and inauspicious start for the champion Lola Porsche. As we saw that car make its way down into the pits. Problems early, there it is, and the engine cover is off of the car. Let's go quickly down to Cal.
Well, they believe they've actually fouled the plug during the pace laps here. Very slow pace there on those 2 laps that they had to take, and Andy Wallace has taken the car around. He's reported to the team that the engine is running a little bit sick. They're trying to do a diagnosis right now, and this is very costly on the opening lap, of course.
If it is a simple fix, however, obviously 24 hours of racing and they can work their way up, and if everything works well, could be right back in contention in a few hours' time. Meanwhile, back up onto the banking over on the west banking. There is Didier Taze, the leader in that Dallara car. Now, if you were with us for our Le Mans coverage the last couple of years, you may recognize that car, silver trim, when it was run as the Chrysler entry for Oreca Racing. One of those cars purchased by Kevin Doran and Freddie Lienhardt, dropped the Judd engine in the back of it, repainted, and that car has proven to be very, very fast.
It's extremely fast. It goes through the chicane for the first of many, many times. The chicane gets very, very dusty and dirty as they clip those corners and start digging up the sand here, but at the moment the field looking very controlled.
Well, the last thing you want to do is throw it away and make some mistake in the early going. On board the Risi Ferrari right now, Eric Van de Poele on board. And, of course, a very, very accomplished endurance racer. Sits right there, goes by in the 4th spot, chased by Jim Matthews, Factory Riley and Scott. Now, Van de Poele drops low, is going to take a run at the Crawford and makes the move. That was a number 2 Crawford that was sitting in 3rd. Now has been demoted back to 4th, and it looks as well as Weaver has gone around and picked up a spot from the Riley and Scott entry right behind him, the factory entry.
Jan Lammers driving that Crawford, very, very experienced. Of course, it's going to be really great to see Tony Stewart take over the wheel of that car in about another 2 hours from now.
One of the interesting things as we look at that beautiful Ferrari, of course, the Duran entry with Lienhardt used to run a Ferrari. Then they decided to put a Judd engine in the back of it, and it was quite effective, but they felt they needed a newer chassis, so they went with Dallara. But that Ferrari is actually built by Dallara. It was commissioned out by the Ferrari factory, and so they've really sort of kept it within the family as they made the step. And I'll tell you, they're very high on that new Dallara chassis. The plumbing and getting the Judd engine in the back of it has obviously been a bit of a work, but I think they're very, very confident in the future.
The car apparently handles extremely well. The drivers are absolutely over the moon about it. And it's just some niggling little things because it obviously is relatively new as an overall package.
Well, it was being put together by the Oreca group in France, and they decided to drop that project, so the cars became free, and Kevin Doran stepped in and purchased one. Good race going on here between this group here, 2, 16, 25. There's a very, very close race here.
Yeah, that's the Crawford, and then right behind it, James Weaver. Those two having a good scrap, and closing on them is the number 36 entry, Guy Smith, behind the wheel. That's the erstwhile factory Riley and Scott program. And that's an interesting story, too. The engine they're running is a Robert Yates built 6-liter V8 Ford that now is prepped and maintained by Elan Performance Products, one of Don Panos's companies. And it's, in fact, the engine that runs in the Panos Roadsters. So right there, that car is sort of a little bit of a question mark, but you know it's quick.
Exactly. And right behind him is the EFR in the second one of the Dyson engines, the 20 car.
I'm afraid to say the champion car is still in the pits, which is not what they wanted. So much effort's gone into that car. Dave Mirage has put so much money, so much effort with Porsche's backing to get this car here as an endurance car for Hurley to try and get his 6th Daytona victory. And I must admit, it's the last thing I expected to see in the pit lane for the first 3 laps of the race.
Boy, I'll tell you, that's a real downer when you're 3 laps down and the race is only 3 laps old.
James Weaver, by the way, just went by that Crawford. An absolutely great pass. Let's go down to Cal, who's with Andy Wallace.
Andy, the last thing we expected to see was this car in the pits on the opening lap. What happened, mate?
Well, just on the left bar, the pace car, it went right over 5,000 RPM. So nothing we could do really. We're just having a look to see if it's failed a plug or a coil broken or something.
Is this a problem that you've encountered this weekend or something new?
We've never ever seen this before. It's just the way it goes, I guess. The start of a race, funny things happen, but we'll get back, don't worry.
Andy Wallace has won 3 of these things. Hurley Haywood's won 5, and stellar driving crew on this team, and they're going to go to work and try and get them back out in the action.
That's a very good point. When Andy Wallace says we'll get back, don't worry, you listen.
You do listen, but I think he's in a bit of a dream world at the moment. But we've seen all these cars flounder over the last couple of years, and a GT car or GTS car win it, so he could well be right. The car should be so reliable, it should be so good, and he gets sidelined by a silly little problem that they've got right now.
Elliott Forbes Robinson taking a run at Guy Smith in the tri-oval down to the inside. And let's see if he's going to try. Not going to be able to get the late braking move done. Smith covers a little bit. Both of them running behind the Crawford right there. And of course that all white car, that's the new variant of the Riley and Scott. And the one that is right behind it is the older, the original Riley and Scott chassis, much modified by the Dyson team, but nonetheless, you can see just a little bit different look to that car.
Profile to it. It looks a bit more slippery, but they had a bit of trouble developing that car. That car, first of all, came out last year, but the old Riley Scott was so good that they didn't bother to do much development work. But obviously, sooner or later, you've got to start making some changes.
And there's Jan Lammers right there in that beautiful blue and silver Crawford. Now, that car was actually purchased and was going to run last year, and they found out that it was so effective in its downforce, it wasn't very quick in a straight line, and they actually took it back to the factory and started to rework it, and they're very high on it now. They say the car is a much more better balance in terms of downforce versus the coefficient of drag, and they think there could be some great things out of that car, and that's really here now as a factory effort from the folks at Crawford.
Well, it was interesting to hear Tony Stewart talk about the whole Crawford family, because I know Max Crawford and Jan Crawford very well. He was the crew chief when I drove for John Fitzpatrick back in 1982 and 83, and his wife Jan was always there, a great help to the team, and I saw her this weekend, and they're having a good time down here, and they're trying hard. But Max, of course, you know, is a bit limited on his resources, and they've really been trying hard with this car, and they've got a great driver lineup, and Max certainly puts a lot of effort into these things, so hopefully they have a good lucky weekend.
Coming up on some lap traffic, that's one of the GTS Vipers right there.
The Judd Lola just came in the pits, car number 30 with the Field family in the car. One of the various cars in the race with father and son teams going on in there.
There again, a look at that new variant Riley and Scott, the Mark IIIC, and the team car. That's the number 37. Lola Judd, the Banana Joe's entry, has gone off. Big spin at the exit of turn 1.
Yeah, we were just watching those go around the corner. I suddenly thought I saw a car drop out the bottom of the picture. There it is.
Well, John Field is unquestionably a very quick driver over any given single lap, but his exuberance sometimes gets the better of him, and his reputation is sometimes he's blindingly quick, but then he might have a little bit of an off, and he is always aggressive in the opening laps of any race, and it bit him just a little bit here. He got away with it, though.
He got away with it, didn't hit anything, luckily, at this early stage. Of course, hasn't lost a lot of ground, unlike the Lola Porsche, which is still the champion car, which is still in the pit, so that is really starting to lose some horrible ground now. 4 laps down, 5
Not
about
good.
to be 5.
Not good at all. So we watch Field recovering. Let's go back to our lead in the SRP2 division. That's the helmet of Anthony Lazzaro, who qualified the car with a good pull through the kink here, and now into what they call the West Horseshoe. Of course, that older Riley and Scott, exactly the opposite, designed to make tons of downforce,
yeah.
and because of the tight street circuit nature.
It's good right here in the infield, but not quite so good on the banking. So what he picks up in torque and horsepower over the Judd engine on the banking and the long back straight, he might lose a bit of that in downforce.
Weaver wants by. He is really trying to be somewhat relentless. Up onto the banking here, once they get up into the rev band, there it goes. The Ascari eases away just a little bit here. We're going to watch him down the back straight. Weaver just ducked slow. That's the Norma BMW powered machine, and Weaver tried to catch a little toe off of that car. But there goes Lutberger, opening it up just a little bit as they head down the back straight and into the chicane. And you wonder what happened to that bodywork? Here it is, right there, right up the nose of our SRP2 entry. We'll be back. Powered Dallara from Freddie Lienhardt and Kevin Durant's team. Lista, the sponsor, that's Freddie Lienhardt's company. And you can see traffic already starting to keep things interesting as they start to work through it. And one of the issues here, one, you've got all the different classes with the different amount of speeds that they're running. That's the number 43 entry. By the way, that car involved in an incident, that's Peter Barron. And watch what happens here. Peter looks to go down inside underneath the number 68 Racers Group car right there of Robert Nern, and it just got away from him.
I think he'd already got the flat tire.
You're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
He got the flat tire, which is why that braking effort went awry. He nudged the 68 car. Meanwhile, of course, Didier Tage was trying to get through in the lead. Here's the lead pack all rushing 68 car facing the wrong way. Here's the 43 car to have that tire fixed.
Now, did he flatten it under braking? Because this is actually what happened. I drove a GT3 car 2 years ago here, and it's exactly what happened to my teammate. The wheels lock up so quickly that you get flat spots very easily. And of course, this could well have happened as he braked. You can see the smoke pouring off.
Well, one of the things that happens too here, and we'll see it as the race unfolds, down the back straight into that chicane back there, there is no curbing on the inside of that chicane when you get to that little piece of the right-hander. So cars cut the corner, and all sorts of debris come up onto the track. And when you've got a tire that's hot and worn, just a stone can cut through that.
Well, I have to say, I've always been very concerned. I've been racing for 20-odd years, and we've always said we must have curbs, real curbs on the inside of that. And of course, the organizers say we can't because it's a NASCAR track. But they can make things, you know, movable these days. You put them in concrete and set them in holes underground. They've got, and I went through the racetrack yesterday, as you know, and there was dirt all over the road. And it gets worse as the race goes on, and stones, because these GT cars, they don't care too much if they take a bit of dirt. If you hit it with one of these outright prototype cars you see in the sports prototype, you're in a lot of trouble because you zoom across the road towards the bank, and there was a massive incident there. And I drove the Ferrari here 4 years ago, just shocking through there. So I wish they'd do something on the inside of those.
Sure, there must be a way of putting some sort of temporary curve.
And there is, David. You just make these prefabricated concrete quite high curbings. The guys will keep off them if they're hard. They won't keep off them if they're soft, and that's what they are now. They're going through turn 2, the GTS leader.
Yep, the Jaguar Gentilozzi currently sits 13th overall. Gentilozzi, Simo, and of course Scott Pruitt and Lauer are running right there, having a very strong run. And these guys, you know, they were talking about the cars run very well and nothing major. I do wonder though, this is a Trans Am based car and they're designed to go for those 125-mile sprint races essentially. What are they going to have to do to get this car to last for some 24 hours and 1,000 miles?
Well, obviously the engine would have to be tuned very differently to how they have it tuned for the Trans Am. The gearbox should probably be okay. And the rest of it, the suspension, and I mean, they don't want to be rebuilding I mean, they obviously rebuild them after every race, but they don't replace an awful lot of parts for these Trans Am cars. I mean, they're pretty beefy cars, but they'd have to detune the engine.
But he has so much experience into those guys. I mean, you have to give them, of all the teams that have come into this from Trans Am, this is the team that have the experience to do well here, because he's driven so many long-distance races.
Well, you mentioned the team, and I mean, Rocket Sports is easily one of the best teams in racing, whether it's Trans Am or whatever. They do an incredible job. And let's not forget, they also, I mean, there were a lot of years in the old IMSA days that Gentilozzi ran lots of endurance racing. Right behind, there's number 82. That's one of our AGT cars. And right there, just making the pass, the number 83, second in GTS. That's the number 83, Mike Yules and Joff Lister right there. And that car actually qualified much further back, but we understand that Charles Nierberg behind the wheel of that car right now, and he's got that thing flying up in the 14th overall, second in class.
You have to say these are the most perfect driving conditions. It's mid-70s, there's no sunshine out at the moment, a little bit overcast. It's perfect for these cars and for the drivers.
Celine's Chris Bingham, and of course Bingham has had some tremendous success in these cars here stateside the last year, winning a couple of championships as well. So right there, that's your battle for second between those two Celines in the GTS division right now as they come out of the infield up onto the banking as we join Anthony Lazzaro, who is chasing those cars up onto the banking here at Daytona. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Daytona and the 40th anniversary of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. There's a look at Didier Taze, your leader. And you can see here some of the interesting aerodynamics and channeling that they use on that car. Actually, when you get behind the front wheels, that hole where it drops off and around that big bulbous splitter, it's wide open out the back. They've done some amazing things to manage the airflow over that car. And of course, Didier Taze doing a nice job of managing the car. This torque and pull out of the slower corners, out of the chicane and the like, may be off just a little bit when you get the ultimate top end. But in this track, when you start working traffic, it's torque oftentimes that seems to really play the key. There's a good look at Weaver, who is absolutely magic in traffic.
Because even when you're with those slower cars, you know, cars that are much, much slower, when you come off those tight infield corners, just initially, they've got almost as much grunt as you have, and that's where the big engine that James Weaver's got in the 16 car here really helps him in traffic.
Of course, this driver, James Weaver, his normal teammate Butch Leitzinger, one of the guys they've fought so much the past couple of years in Grand Am Racing. Oliver Gavin has now joined the team, and I would imagine, Calvin, that he might be offering up some interesting strategy ideas.
Well, absolutely, Greg. Ollie, we're talking about strategy for this race, and we see Didier Taze out at the point right now, setting a pretty hard pace. How disciplined do you have to be here for 24 hours? The team has come up short a couple of times now in the last 2 years.
Well, James and Butch have been talking to me about that and just saying, look, we need to just pace ourselves, don't get carried away with the person, what he's doing in front, just see if we can make sure that we can stay on the lead lap. Don't be too worried about, you know, what that guy's doing at the front, because he's maybe wearing himself out, wearing the car out. So don't be too concerned, just make sure we try and stay on the lead lap.
You and Butch and James have put on some great battles over the last 18 months or so. You've been running with John Field in that Lola. How much fun is it to be teamed up with these boys for this race?
No, it's great fun. I've learned a lot just from this one weekend with James and Butch, and it's really great fun. It's a very light-hearted sort of atmosphere, but still very, very professional, wanting to get on, make sure the car's right, and doing the best job possible.
Class, yet he was checking his mirrors just to make sure when he hit that traffic in front, he wasn't going to have anybody coming by him in the category. Here's a look at the number 38 champion Porsche. It did go back out. Wallace took it out, but Derek, he only took it out for one lap, and he's right back in again.
Changing the wheel now.
Changing the steering wheel as well as the road wheels. It could well be somebody to do that. Maybe he's having bad transmission with the pits, but obviously it's not running that well. He went out and just did one lap, and the team didn't exactly leap all over it when he came in.
Let's check in with Calvin.
Well, I spoke to the team, and they were a firm believer in that it was the spark plug. It took a phenomenal amount of time to get that changed, but I think they're going to change the gearbox quicker than they changed the spark plug in this thing. But there's so many ancillaries hanging off that left bank of the engine that it took the guys quite a while. They thought they had it cleaned up, and I spoke to the team manager. He said the engine is very finicky with the temperature. As soon as Andy fired it up on the false grid, the engine immediately began to misfire, and Andy wanted to really go hard to try and clean the engine out, but obviously on the pace lap he was unable to do that. Now this steering wheel has a lot of electronic equipment based around that, so that may be a reason they've changed it, trying to eliminate all the various problems.
Well, now they're also looking at, Calvin, it appears, the right bank of the engine as well. So they're looking at every aspect, I would suspect, right now. And I mean, sometimes, you know, the electronics so touchy that if you have a problem with your steering, oh, and this is, I believe that's our second place car, the number 49. That's the number 23, excuse me. Helmet caught me out there. And yep, the number 23, which was in the pits earlier and went out and is apparently still struggling as well. Ben Collins, the driver of that entry. Now that is not Judd powered. That is a BMW powered entry. And it looks like, I thought for a minute he might be going right behind the wall.
Yeah, he is.
So they,
I was talking to them last night, and they said they thought the car had such reliability, under stress, a beautiful car and engine for this race.
Well, it just goes to show you that there is no certain thing when it comes to 24-hour endurance racing. There, your leader remains Didier Tays, chased by Lupberger, Weaver, Lammers, and Elliott Forbes Robinson.
Sports Racing Prototype is the premier class in Grand Am racing, and as you can see, this chassis bears very little resemblance to a production-based vehicle, but certainly this car, the new Crawford, is going to generate a lot of downforce. Here we're looking at the front-end design. As you go back through the side of the car, very important how they really take the air along the side, creating downforce all the way towards this massive rear wing. Now, this amount of downforce is certainly going to make the car very stable up on the banks here at Daytona, but most importantly, very quick through the infield. That's where they're gaining their lap time from. Also, the brakes, massive brakes, really enables this top class to deal with the traffic very effectively. Various engine packages. We're looking at the Judd V10 here in the Crawford. We have the Ferrari from Risi. We also have the Ford V8 with Dyson Racing. And of course, that Porsche Turbo should be a factor here this weekend. And the Grand Am Regs really equalize all of these various engine packages through a variety of air restrictors.
So that's a look from Calvin Fish at these class, or at the SRP class at any rate, as we're watching the battle for fifth right now. The number 20 entry of Elliott Forbes Robinson, right behind him, that bright colored machine. That also one of the new Riley and Scott cars. That's the number 74 Hunting Ranch entry, Jack Baldwin, behind the wheel right now. By the way, Bill Robinson of Hurlock, Maryland wrote, being new to this type of racing, I'd appreciate as much information on the chassis engine types as you can give out. Thanks very much. Well, here's a little bit of some stats on the SRP class. As you see, open cockpit, purpose-built. They have to run the full width roll hoop, which actually is fairly significant. Steel brakes, and you can run turbos or normally aspirated cars. But as I understand it, gentlemen, they're restricted to about 600 horsepower, give or take, and that's what keeps the competition so close.
Well, that's the SRP cars are restricted to about 600 horsepower, as Calvin said, with various restrictors on the engines, and of course the weight, as you can see, the car's 1985, their minimum weight. And the SRP2 cars, of course, are just a smaller version of this, very, very similar chassis. Of course, the engines are smaller, V6 Nissan being one of the favorite engines in there. They develop about 360 horsepower, so, you know, they're giving up very close to 300 horsepower.
Run a little narrower tire, but of course, narrower chassis, bodywork, very slippery. Then you got the GT class, two divisions there, GTS, which is basically just a real high horsepower closed GT cars. Then GT for the slightly less powerful machines, a little narrower tire, a little less wing perhaps, and then American GT tube frame American muscle cars, and that really is the best way to take a look at those five classes. Now remember, If you have questions, you can always email us at www.speedvision.com. On this big weekend, as number 39 goes around, that is Tom Papadopoulos in the Porsche GT3R. But we wanted to know just how many NASCAR drivers are there in the field today. We talked about it a little bit up top, but it's Tony Stewart, Robbie Gordon, Wally Dallenbach Jr., Kyle Petty, Derek Cope, and Kevin Harvick. So 6 of them. We also have Rick Corelli, of course, who stand out NASCAR craft from trucks, and Rob Morgan, who's done some NASCAR craft and truck driving, is here as well. And former IRL champ and pole sitter at Indianapolis last year, Scott Sharp, here as well on board. This is the Risi Competizione Ferrari. Has dropped back a little bit, sits in the 8th spot. Eric Van der Poel, I think, Derek, you had talked earlier about, you set your pace, you got a target pace. You have to drive hard as the driver to get to it, but the car's laying back a little bit. You think right now they're just saving themselves, saying thanks to the car he just went.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that. The fact that he waved to that guy as he gets chopped up quite unmercifully there.
62
fairly normal. That happens.
Wandering across the road, that's Dennis Spencer, the SRP2 car.
But I think the way to look at it is the fact that these guys are settling into a good pace right now. You can tell by his downshifts are very calm, very cool. He doesn't want to outstress the gearbox because, let's face it, it's better to change the brake pads, which takes something like 2 or 3 minutes, than change a gearbox that takes 40. So let's use the brakes, let's conserve the engine and, of course, the brakes.
Number 33, Ferrari of Washington entry. That's the one Kurt Wagner, Bill Oberlin driving. Watch what happens right here to Kurt Wagner.
Well, I didn't see any other cars happen, did you?
But the way it went around, that's what I was going to say. It almost looked like something locked up.
And at that point, there's no... At that time, the flat tire, well, it was a flat tire, but it's sad that he's parked there. I thought he could have got back, and I can't understand that.
Well, it went back quick, didn't it?
Yeah, it must have been some additional damage perhaps done as a result of the flat tire, and so that's the problem for him. And before we cut up the SRP2 entry of the Crocodile Mazda Kudzu that just got in front of Eric Van der Poel there. Remember, they're the ones whose body work came off, and I would imagine if the banking had flat out, that could get that car moving around just a little bit, and a little bit of a handful. Back on board with Anthony Lazzaro, continues to lead in the SRP2 division, and right there, a classic example of the dirt that we talk about that builds up and makes the chicane here at Daytona so interesting as the race unfolds. Back at Daytona, the first pit stop of one of the major players unfolding. Let's go down to Guy Hobbs.
Yeah, the racing competition, Ferrari has come in. Looks like a regular stop, clearing out the grill, adding the fuel and all 4 tires, 4 new tires. I'm surprised they didn't double stint these tires. Back out, everything seems to be okay, no problems. Just a regular on-schedule pit stop.
I just have to say one thing, that one of the reasons that they don't double stint the first set of tires is they're never quite sure what the wear pattern is like under these conditions. Remember, there are only 2 tires, the hard and the soft. They haven't run for 40 minutes at any part of the weekend, so they want this first stop to take those tires off, check them out, then they'll know next time to leave them on for 2.
Also, right here, gentlemen, we are watching the battle for the lead in GTS. That's the number 3 Paul Gentilozzi-driven Jaguar, and the car swinging out, trying to run around the outside, couldn't get it done. The number 83 Celine of Ian McKellar, and this is absolutely a battle for the lead in the GTS class. Right now, that is 10th overall is where Gentilozzi is running, and running very impressively is Ian McKellar. Brought that up, and the Crawford, Jan Lammers brings the number 2 Crawford in. Let's go down to Cal.
Well, there's going to be a driver change here. It's going to be the Brit Johnny Molan taking over from Jan Lammers. They're going to do singles initially, so it will be Tony Stewart getting in at the next pit stop. This car has run pretty much flawlessly all weekend. A lot of the front-running teams have been having little niggly problems, but the Crawford has been running very well. Since the test they did here 1 month ago, they've actually switched to a new gearbox, and when they got here this week, it was the first time they've run it. It's an X-Trax gearbox. They had problems with the other one. They feel pretty confident with it, but when they changed to the new gearbox, it actually changed all of the pickup points in the suspension and everything else, so they really had to go to work on the setup of the car once again, but the driver seemed very happy with it, and Max Crawford, after qualifying where Jan Lammers put it in the 3rd position, was very happy with the progress.
Very effective stop there for essentially a fairly new team. You've got to be impressed. Oh, but he stalled it.
I was just about to say,
on his way out.
This is a very special moment for Johnny Molan. It's the first time he's really been in an up-top car. He's a very talented young British driver, and he's so excited this weekend. And he did very well in yesterday afternoon's final practice, final qualifying, and this is a very special moment for this young Englishman going out in an open sports car. It's something he's always wanted to do.
Well,
the car down, sticker tires.
Sticker tires, yeah. Keep in mind, of course, that he ran in the GT class last year in both the Grand Am and the ALMS series with great success, and really made his name in Britain with the British Porsche, I believe the Pirelli Super Cup series. the first ever driver to win all 17 races with 15 poles in one season. Second place entry, that of course Werner Lutberger looks like he's going to be staying on board. That is the Judd-powered Ascari, number 49, and they're just going to stay put with him in the car. And Guy, I don't even know if they're going to go after tires. He looks confused too.
And it doesn't look like they're going to go to tires, just adding fuel at this point and running some data out of the computer back to the pit area here. Ian Dawson holding him at guard as we get ready to send him back out, but it doesn't look like they're going to be any kind of tire change here. Of course, that new tire rule this year, they've got the Goodyears, same as the Risi competition. Now they've spotted, looked like they had a problem on the left front, but they've decided not. Let's go down to Calvin with the Dyson team.
Well, one of the Dyson cars is in, Guy, and that's the number 20 at the moment, driven by EFR. He gives a thumbs up to the team. Everything looks pretty good. A lot of smoke and heat, as you can see, coming from the front grills there over the front wheels. A lot of brake temperature there, but looks like a routine start from the veteran. EFR, he seems to get younger every year instead of older, Guy, and he takes it back on the pit road. Let's go back down to Guy.
Now the engine cover has come off the back of the Judd-powered Ascari. They didn't actually do anything. Kind of ripped some tape off, because the other Ascari is already behind the wall. They had a problem with a misfire. They've sent that one behind the wall already. This one, the 49, the quicker one of the two, Werner Lutberger, who got it, qualified it second. Now they've gone back to, no, okay, now the rear bodywork's going back on. There you can see them unplugging the computer, and it looks like they'll send him back out. So let's go back down to you, Cal.
Overheating problem. Not really overheating, but a higher temperature than they wanted to see on the telemetry. So as you can see, they're actually changing the ducting there, allowing a little bit more air into the radiators in the attempt to get this thing cooled down. But a very strong driver lineup here. George Robinson, Jack Baldwin, the regular drivers. They've got Mark Simo, but of course NASCAR star Wally Dollenbach Jr. is going to be joining them a little bit later in the driving stint.
Good racing, and obviously a lot of experience here at Daytona. Class winner here before in the Jack Roush Fords, and Wally Dollenbach, and of course his father, both big names in American racing.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I'm very surprised they're having this problem. It's much cooler today, and you'd have thought they'd have had this overheating problem yesterday, not today, unless they thought it was that much cooler and blanked it off. And
I think that's what they did to the
And looking
guy.
at a situation developing here, the number 36, Riley and Scott from Matthews, came in, and they actually had to push the Robinson car back. Then it got stalled. Now finally underway.
Behind the wheel, he stays in the car. And, he's really the lead driver this weekend. Robbie Gordon and Scott Sharp, obviously a lot of talent. Jim Matthews, the team owner as well. They really have let Guy take the lead in qualifying and setting the car up, and he's really at home going to do a first double.
And we watch as he heads back out on track, and I'll tell you, that car running extremely well right now. Of course, running that Elan Ford Yates-built engine behind the driver right there. Very strong effort as well.
Welcome back to the 24 Hours of Daytona here live on Speed Vision. Didier Tays, the leader, brings the Lister car in, and it looks like routine stop. I spoke to the team. They said no changes. Didier is very happy. He will do a double. Then he'll be turning it over, I believe, to Mauro Baldi or Max Pappas for the second stint. But everything is running like clockwork. But in practice this weekend, they have had some problems with this new car. They ran in the finale here at Daytona last year. Really didn't have a great run. Really felt they didn't have enough rear downforce. But Kevin Durant gives the team the okay to go ahead. They've had electrical problems this weekend and problems with the power steering, but everything's okay thus far.
But right behind you, Calvin, about 5 or 6 spots back in the pit lane, the number 16 of James Weaver came in, looked fairly routine, and suddenly it looked like James was really struggling with something down in the foot area of the cockpit. Now there's Butch Leitzinger, so apparently they've elected, with all the problems they're having, to just get Weaver out, fix it, and then make the drivers change and save some time. Cal?
Looks like they've spilled something in there.
Yeah, Cal?
Down here in the Dyson pit and with James. James, what's the problem, mate?
After a couple of laps, I think we've got a power steering hose that's also a leak on the power steering system somewhere. It's been dripping oil on the pedals. It's got so bad, we're going to fix it.
For an old boy like yourself with no power steering, it's going to be a long 24 hours, I'd imagine.
Oh, I can manage without the power steering, so I can't manage all the fluid dropping on the pedals. It's quite slippery, power steering fluid.
How's the car running, though? And were you trying to discipline yourself with the pace? I mean, Tays was very quick. The Ascari looked good, and you looked a little racy, but the last couple of years has kind of bit you when you went to the lead.
Yeah, I think if we hadn't had that fluid leak, I'd have probably been able to run second comfortably, but running third's good for us. Our biggest threat, we think, is the Ferrari and Andy Wallace's Lola.
Okay, mate. Good luck the rest of the way.
Thanks.
Well, of course, Andy Wallace's Lola Porsche, probably not the threat that it once was. Obviously, they're well down, although they have apparently got it fixed and it's out and running. It's a lot of laps back, but there's Butch now in the car. Now, what's his mindset, knowing that those pedals are covered with very slippery fluid, and he's got to come down from 200 miles per hour here in the bank?
Well, hopefully they've cleaned the pedals down. They've wiped them off. There are tons of paper toweling in there. Now they're obviously trying to attack the hose and get that fixed, and I suppose they'll have to top up the power steering oil supply, but this is the sort of stop you just don't need, especially when you're going to lose the race by a couple of minutes at the end. It's just one of those.
And the whole point about the philosophy about winning this race is you don't want to stop for anything untoward and winning a 24-hour race. And if you stop for anything like this, you've immediately put yourself back in the pack. I know it's pretty damn logical, but if you do that, you're in a losing position. The cars that haven't stopped yet, they're looking really strong. That's a long way to go, and it's a silly thing to say, but you don't want to have to stop for anything except for fuel and tires.
Once you get behind, I mean, you get behind. Very often these races do come back to you, but the fact is you just can't, at this early stage, you certainly can't count on it.
Well, the history of this, the last 2 years of this race, of course, has been that these SRP cars have not been good, but I have to say the history of Le Mans is that there's always a good car up front that finishes very well. Somebody's having a major
the tire's gone on the 89 car. Looks like the right rear tire's gone, I think.
That's Robert Julien. That's the Porsche House SRP2 Nissan Lola, one of the cars that has been a front runner and actually took it down to the final round of the championship last year, just missing the championship, and exactly right rear tire down, bodywork damage, a lot of smoke coming from that car. And he's got a bit of a drive to bring that back around and into the pits.
This is one of those things where the devil you do, the devil you don't. He should go slowly because he doesn't want that tire to come apart, because once it really starts to flail around, it can break all sorts of sensitive stuff back there, like oil coolers, oil lines, pipes, water pipes. You've got to be so careful. And yet you're obviously in a hurry to get back and get it fixed.
I mean, 80 miles an hour seems pretty darn slow. It's very fast when he's hitting things.
Meanwhile, let's get back down to Calvin Fish. Cal?
Well, we're down here by the number 16 Dyson car, and they're really not trying to fix the seal or anything on this power steering system. They're just trying to wrap rags around the column itself so there's no more fluid gets down into the footbox area. So it's really pretty much a band-aid. It looks like the team are going to go with the power steering pump really not working, and it's going to be a lot more work physically. This is only a 3-driver team. They, of course, can maybe switch some drivers around. I'm not sure exactly what the rules are now on that. I know they did it in the past, and they've tried to limit that from happening, but it's going to be a tough sled for these guys if there's only 3 of them with no power steering.
All right, Cal, it'll be interesting to watch. At least it looks like they now may have that done as they are getting Butch Leitzinger ready to head out. Meanwhile, Didier Taze, after all the pit stop, continues to lead, but Elliott Forbes Robinson now second, and Guy Smith in the Riley and Scott factory effort, number 36. Welcome back to the 40th anniversary of the Rolex 24 here at Daytona International Speedway. There's your leader in the American GT division, tube frame chassis American muscle cars, Herb Hare. Not only is he driving the car, this is a car he designed and built. And of course, another great name from the era of Herb Hare's success in Trans Am and IMSA racing, Darren Brassfield has joined on board. They also have Jack Bush driving, and the team owner is Woodson Duncan, who's a pretty good driver in his own right.
AGT is the class for the all-American muscle car. Now, in the field this weekend, we have Camaros, we have Mustangs, and we also have Corvettes, such as this machine we're looking at right now. Now, it's the least high-tech of the 5 classes in Grand Am racing, but it also makes it the most affordable for the teams to go race with. They are allowed some downforce here. You're looking at the rear wing, but underneath the skin is what this car is all about. Very strong tube frame chassis, and underneath the hood, we find that American muscle. V8 power up to 350 cubic inches. It should be very durable for this 24-hour race, and the guys are sure to put on a great show this weekend.
And it's a class as well that is starting to really end up with some very, very close racing. And this is a shot we want to show you here. This is number 90, as I mentioned. It's the second of the 2 Fleece Racing entries. This is the Remax machine. Driving that car, one of the big stories here, I think, is Kevin Harvick. Of course, we mentioned the Rookie of the Year in NASCAR Winston Cup and the Busch Grand National Champion from last year. And as we take a look at some of the additional stats on this category.
Where they are, aren't they? That's the problem coming through there.
Well, one of the things, of course, Harvick, very impressive in qualifying, and everybody's saying, well, you know, he's a stock car guy. Well, he cut his teeth in his early career in go-kart racing, which, of course, pretty much ends up being road racing style, and you learn to left foot brake and a lot of the tendencies that become so second nature to road racers. So Harvick had some experience. Always love that shot. They get so close to that guardrail there as they work through the S's into the Rodriguez horseshoe here.
There's one of the SRP cars going by. Oop, the 12 car having a bit of trouble here.
Yep, that's one of our GTS entries, as a matter of fact. It's called an Ultima GTR. R.K. Smith, the starting driver in that car, and it has gone on. I don't know if he spun or if he just sensed that they had a problem, because that car, he's trying to restart.
I think he's got it going now. It blew it out then, didn't it? I think that's that flame was coming out the exhaust pipe. I don't think it's coming out of the engine bay as such.
See if we can pick up what. Oh yeah, it was definitely. Well, guess what, Derek? That's over in that dirt in the chicane.
Can you see it? Wasn't there some lying there?
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable. And that's we're having only an hour's gone by now. If I was him, I think it must be time to think about getting out or doing something about that. No, he's got spinning. It's pretty wet out there too.
He's got it going. I think he's. Yep, there you go. Don't stall it.
Because he's got to pick his spot. It's pretty quick there when the guys come in. Here they come.
And by the way, here's a look at our GT leader. That's the number 24 Mosler, João Barbosa, the very talented young Portuguese driver, stand out in Formula 2000, Formula Atlantic racing a couple of years ago. This is a very neat package, this Mosler GT, the 900 GT. Very attractive car, very sleek car, and very quick. They've had some teething problems. Last year, he put the car, this same car, basically on pole here last year. It's his second straight pole, but last year he said they rushed the build so quickly on the car to get to Daytona, and he said it just wasn't quite right. Now, of course, they've had a year to really figure out what they needed to do on this car, and they're very confident it does have the ability to last and to be a factor come the end of the 24 hours.
Certainly a slick-looking car, that Moser. There's no doubt about it. Got a great line.
Number 57 now, that's Hugh Plum. That's Hugh Plum. Now, we mentioned that Plum normally runs a Honda with P.D. Cunningham's team in World Challenge Touring. Watch what happens here. He picks up the lead in the class and promptly loops it. Got a little excited, apparently, about leading here. This is a pretty good step for Hugh, stepping from a front drive Acura Integra in World Challenge Touring competition into the GT division. This is some pretty serious rear drive and very fast machinery. Quick recovery, though, remains in the lead. Bizot, the number 83, one of the front runners in the GTS class, has ducked down into the pits. That is was the GTS leader. Ian McKellar was the starting driver in that car, and we're not sure. I did not see yet. Looks like he may stay on board, and looks like they just did some tires here and look pretty casual. There he goes. Welcome back. Want to take a look at our first hour highlights. It all started off the green flag with Andy Wallace bringing the champion Lola into the pits. Problems there. Then John Field looped it, and the number 37 Lola Judd powered in. Watch this. Pete Barron, a tire goes down in the number 43 car, gets in the back of Robert Nern's number 68 entry. There is the culprit for Barron. He was able to get it around and into the pits without any more untoward damage. Big moment here. Watch number 46 Charles Morgan. Big loop right in front of the car of Jim Downing. Then number 89 Robert Julien, the Porsche House SRP2 car, flat tire, debris all over the place, and then James Weaver brings in the number 16, and they've got, as they say, issues. A little bit of a...
Well, when you compress all that into about 25 seconds, it looked like an awful lot of action in hour one, didn't it?
It was. It was a lot of action. We had some great racing. There's your leader still.
Boy, look at the traffic, too.
Yeah, right there. Now, you're watching Butch Leitzinger, and, of course, he's down a lap or so, and Butch is doing everything he possibly can right now to try and get by Didier Taze and at least get one of those laps back.
Well, they've got to go for it. 4 laps behind, you can't linger. They've got to actually get by and make up some time. And these guys, if anybody do in that car, the experience they've got with that 16 car, they can do it.
Right behind them is that Guy Smith in the 36 car. Guy Smith stayed in the car, didn't he?
Yes, it is. They are, I think Guy Smith is down but a lap here at this stage. Or actually, yep, he's down 1 lap. So he would like to get by as well.
He would certainly like to get by and get that lap back.
Going to go take a look at a close moment here. The chicane, this is just a lap ago. Always interesting here. Watch this. There's Taze, and look at this GT car. Almost clipped Leitzinger.
I mean, it's such a dangerous corner, that coming up the next straight. You're terrified of flooring it, because tell you what, that wall, as you come out of there, you only want to be tapped on the rear end. You're going to go straight in that wall really hard at 120 miles an hour.
Well, Derek, you had alluded to the fact that regardless of whether the engine's detuned or what the situation is, the drivers are driving as hard as they possibly can, and that means GT class cars as well. And you're coming out of that chicane, you're white-knuckled and trying to fend your way and thread that needle back onto the banking, and suddenly one of these SRP cars comes diving underneath, get your attention.
Well, he didn't expect both of them to go by, of course, and generally two wouldn't go by, but when you're in the second SRP car, you want to hang in there. And of course, as you come out of that chicane, you can carry all that momentum all the way around for half a lap.
Exactly, of course, which makes going across the start-finish line here under the booth here the fastest spot on the track. What, 220 in some of these cars?
No, 200. Just under 200.
We're watching the number 36, Guy Smith, behind the wheel. They made a stop, looked routine, and then Calvin went back out and came back in again. What's up?
Yeah, they were in very quickly. When he went back out, he reported a vibration from the rear end of the car. They changed tires, precautionary, just put a splash of fuel in it, and he's reporting that everything's fine. So they believe they just got some tire build-up on the second set of tires when he went back out. So everything seems to be okay now. They've got a little bit of ground to make up. Quick report on the 74 car. We saw them changing the ducting on the side pod to try and get more air into the cooling system there. They're reporting that has made no difference whatsoever to that Judd engine temperature, so that may be a problem over 24 hours.
That's the Robinson car. And by the way, one of the things we're noticing with these Riley and Scott chassis, you know, the new variant, David, you alluded to it, they're trying to get that frontal area and the area that the car is pushing through the air so low, so narrow, so that it's a much better coefficient of drag. It ends up squeezing areas of the car that you can duct air, both through radiators, engines, oil coolers, the whole thing. And that has been a battle that they have indeed been fighting. Up front, it is still Didier Taze taking the battle to everybody else here at Daytona. Elliott Forbes Robinson second, and the Risi Ferrari now up to third. And it promptly won the class. Now we have a car that's the number 79. They're in trouble. Mike Fitzgerald.
He's missing out the chicane totally and just cruising
back.
I wonder if he doesn't have a right rear tire down. Just the way that car is.
Yeah, sort of very much like it.
Up and Leitzinger in. This is out of the blue, so we're going to have to see what happens here. Going for a right front tire, or are they just going for fronts all around, it looks like, Rabs?
He might have flatted the tire, of course. They don't seem to be jumping into that cockpit area for his feet.
They're doing something.
Oh, they are. They're taking that front cover off. Going after the Zeus Fast. Let's go down to Cal.
Okay, well, as you said, Greg, they are about to take that cockpit cover off again and get into the footbox. They're doing routine work as we speak, topping it up with fuel and tires, and I think they're going to have to get in there and probably just keep mopping this up. Once the thing runs out of fluid, the guys will be good to go, but right now, probably really testy for the drivers to keep it on track. Let's go down to Guy Hobbs.
Yeah, thanks, Calvin. Anthony Lazaro's climbed out of the car. Terry Bourcheler is being belted in right now. Remember, we spoke to him at the beginning of the show, and he said he's feeling a little under the weather. Got some flu from the kids, he thinks. They're changing all four tires, adding fuel. Anthony now jumps out of the car, and we'll see if we can't get a quick word here with Anthony. And Greg, you were talking about the car. This car is actually brand new. First time it ran was here on this weekend, on Thursday. Anthony's disappeared to the back. We're going to sneak in and get a word here with him. As he takes his helmet off. Anthony Lazaro, get a quick word with you. Looks like it's a pretty hot work out there, judging by this. He's struggling to get a helmet off. The car is getting ready to go back out. Anthony, tell us a little bit about that first stint out there.
I actually didn't hear the question.
Tell us a little bit about that first stint out there.
Oh, it's typical Daytona. You know, it's a little bit chaotic. I was surprised how many people actually were blowing tires. In fact, we had a lot of pickup on our wheel, and I radioed in that we may have a problem, but it was just pickup. Track's greasy, it's hot. A lot of guys doing a good job, and there's some that aren't, so.
All right. It's a long way to go.
It's a very long way to go.
Back down to you, Calvin.
Well, the Dyson team are going to work in that footbox. Once again, we're going to try and get a quick word here with Butch. Butch, is it just fluid on the feet, the big problem?
Yeah, it's, the power steering is working on our feet, and it's unfortunately right above the brake pedal. So for the first 4 or 5 laps, it wasn't too bad, but then the flow got to be so much that every time you went for the brake, your foot wouldn't slide off of it. It's pretty hard to outbrake anybody.
Is the game plan essentially to let the fluid eventually leak out and then you'll be good to go? How hard is this car to drive without power steering?
Well, actually, that's not the plan, I don't think. We could drive it without power steering, but I think the plan is to fix it now. we weren't hoping the yellow flag would come up, but it was getting to be to the point that we were going to wreck the car. So I think we're just going to do it now and then try to make up time after that.
Okay, I think that may have been why you saw Guy Smith really make the move on Butch under braking there going into the infield, Greg, because he really can't be hard on the pedal.
Well, exactly. We noticed that, and Guy went around the outside of him like he was tied to a post, and obviously Butch being very, very careful trying to get that car slowed down. And when your foot wants to just come off that brake pedal, that is a rather scary moment. So work continues in the Dyson pit. They're going after it. Meanwhile, Terry Borchler on board the Ram Nissan Lola, and it's now up to him to keep it at the front. How many tire manufacturers are represented? How many compounds are they allowed to stock in their pits? And is there one set type of fuel that the different classes must use? Thank you. Well, in terms of the fuel, everybody runs the same fuel. That is, it's a spec fuel supplier. And this year, for the first time, the Grand American Championship has gone to spec tires, or not so much spec tires, but spec tire providers. The SRP, the GTS, and the American GT classes now all run Goodyears, and that is a requirement. SRP2 and GT run the Dunlop tires. And in terms of the compounds, they've come with 3 compounds, a hard, a soft, and a wet, just in case we get there. And Derek, we were talking earlier, we listened to Calvin Fish. He said that a lot of the drivers and the teams are already running the softer compound, which leaves them not much of an option come nighttime. And then we heard Anthony Lazaro just say there's a lot of buildup out there because it's getting hot and greasy. And of course, we've had blown tires, we've had people with vibrations. That's all part of the same package, isn't it?
And you think so, and obviously as we saw, there's a lot of debris on the very far chicane out in the back straightaway, and I think that's where all this build-up of rubber is picking up debris, picking up stones. The one concern I always have when I'm here, and of course eventually that wears its way through and punches the tire.
Well, spin right there by the number 39, and it happened right in front of the battle for third overall. That's Tom Papadopoulos. That's his second spin. There you just saw the Risi Ferrari, then the lap car of Robinson Racing, and then right behind them, the number 2 entry now, and I believe that's Johnny Mollem has taken over that car from Jan Lammers. And I'll tell you, Johnny Mollem is acquitting himself incredibly well. He's made up a lot of ground on a driver the caliber here of Eric van der Poel, and Mollem waited for his opportunity to hit the quote-unquote, and I hate to say it like this, but sort of the big leagues with the SRPs, and he's flying.
Yes, he's going incredibly well indeed. I've been watching them for a few laps, and they are carving their way through this field. And this is what they have to contend with at the beginning of the race, is a lot of inexperienced drivers in cars they haven't driven, obviously, before. As the season progresses, the drivers get more experienced and they get to know their cars. And that's why Daytona is such a lottery when it comes to the end result.
Just a flat tire, or has that got somewhat deranged as well? But it's
Anthony Puello, the AGT entry.
And he's right in the wrong part of the track because he is a long way from home.
He looks deranged as he comes into the chicane, doesn't he?
Robert Dugler actually now is, they did a driver change, but that thing's not turning at all, so.
He wants a lot of road, doesn't he?
Well, that's the 12. That's that Nissan, or the Nissan Ultimate, wrong. That's the Ultimate GT.
That car's already had a bit of a trouble at one time.
Rodney Mall behind the wheel of that car. They've done a driver's change, but you can see he's chatting on the radio and shaking his head, so that would be an indication that there's something a little bit more severe than just a quick spin.
Now, is that going to bring out a yellow? Is that going to bring out a caution flag?
Well, that's something to consider. If it does, we would expect to see a huge flow of GT machinery down into the pits, but so far we remain green. Apparently he's well off track. As you remember, this car we saw earlier had that flat tire and got on the back of the number 68 Racers Group car. As a result, even with that flat tire, they fixed it, got out. They are now leading in GT. That's Pete Barron still behind the wheel of that car. A couple of drivers you may recognize the names of in that car. Mike Borkowski, who you remember as a rookie in the Trans Am a few years ago, had some great races against Tommy Kendall. But how about Kyle Petty, also slated to be the driver of the, ironically, number 43 machine. Remember, this is Petty's third start here in Daytona, and he won at Watkins Glen, not the 6-hour last year, but the 250 race. They won their class, so it's a very, very competent group of drivers here. The last driver, Leo Hendry, also quick. Oh, and Andy Wallace has stopped over on the track, and it was interesting. During the break, Calvin Fish had said that he had radioed in, said the car was absolutely perfect. Well, now you can see him fussing with the steering wheel. Something seriously amiss with that Champion Lola, and where that's parked right now, there's a good look at Andy through the mirror, and he's trying to figure out what's going on.
But where that car's parked right now, if they're going to, well, it looks like they're going to get a wrecker out there and maybe get him hauled away without having to go full course. Calvin, I was hoping you might catch that hint.
We're down here in their pit, and they believe that the shifter linkage is broken. So Andy's going to have to use some of his experience. He's certainly won a lot of these 24-hour races, but as any good endurance driver knows, he's probably been through a thorough sort of like walk around of the car, knowing how everything works, and they may in fact be out there trying to help him fix this to try and get it back to the pits. If he can get it into a gear, get it back here, then the guys will be able to go to work.
What a tough break. I mean, they'd suffered through all the problems, and it was simply one spark plug earlier on that had messed things up. It's just so difficult to get to. They get it going, they radio in, the car's perfect, we're flying, and then something like this happens. So frustration on top of frustration. Here's the number 49 Judd Power Descari. Lupberger is out and turning the car over now to T.J. Bell. You may recognize his name from Atlantic competition, a very talented young driver up through the Formula 4 2000 in Atlantic ranks. Obviously, you can see the seat insert having to be changed. And that's another issue as well, isn't it? You've got some changes in terms of driver size. You have to account for that. Seat inserts becoming possible. And the number 20 is in, Cal.
Yes, they are. EFR has turned it over to his boss, Rob Dyson, and Rob is really enjoying his weekend here. He's got his young son, Chris, driving alongside. We've got our own Dorsey Trader in the car as well. So this car really has a lot of experience. And when you get guys like EFR, Dorsey, and Rob himself, they've all won this race before here, and they know what it takes. Rob stalls it momentarily, a little bit anxious to get going, but this car for Dyson Racing may be the one that sees victory lane on Sunday, because the 16 car is now many laps behind.
Although it's out, has come in, was up to second, and as it pits here, it gives up that spot. Cal?
Should be just routine. It's Johnny Molan who jumped out after a great stint, and that's the NASCAR boy, Tony Stewart, getting behind the wheel. He's pretty excited about this ride this weekend. As we mentioned in the open, he's looking forward to a good weekend here, trying to get the month of February after a great start. And it looks like routine. Johnny Molan jumped out. They've actually got Max Crawford, who owns the car and designed the car, helping here. Tony gets strapped in here. Different size drivers, different inserts, and this is where a contender have a tendency to go wrong here. You see Tony really struggling with the belts, and he's not used to doing these driver changes, so this may take him a couple of goes to get this right. Let's get down to Guy Hobbs.
A bit of action down here in the pit, and the crew for the 09 car is suddenly going to work. They've got a problem, but Kevin Harvick stepped out of the 90 car of Bliss Motorsports. Kevin, we know you spend a lot of time in cars, but you don't normally spend a lot of time in cars on road courses with 80 other cars out there. How was it?
It was pretty good. We're just, trying to set our pace at 158 and not tear anything up. So the floorboard's getting hot, and I didn't have any booties on, so I got out, and before I burnt my foot, we'll put Rick in it.
How are the tires holding out in the GT class?
Everything was great. I mean, Goodyear's brought a good tire, and the tires were really consistent, so not a problem yet.
All right, we'll try and check in with Kevin a little later on.
Thanks, Guy. There's a look at our leader, Didier Tays, bringing it in, and we have a full course caution as well, which we believe is for the stranded, the Lola Porsche from Champion Racing at the exit of the Rodriguez Horseshoe, and it's parked right at the track out. So our leader is in, and Calvin's with him.
Well, the Robson entry just nearly ran me over as they came in, but they really took advantage of this yellow. Duran Racing, they are one of the best in the business at this form of racing. They saw that full caution flag, and Didier Tays was in immediately. He's turning it over to Freddie Lienhardt. He probably doesn't have the outright pace of Tays, Pappas, or Baldy, but he can certainly do a good job, keep his nose clean, and try and keep the car on the lead lap. But we saw Tony Stewart's pit stop take forever as he tried to get the belts going, and these guys have worked together before, but Tays and Lienhardt do seem to be struggling a little bit. Now they're going underneath the front, and there's a fluid bottle, so this is some kind of power steering or brake problem on the front end of this Dallara as well. We'll try and get a quick word here with Kevin Durant. He tends to be a little bit intense. Kevin, what's the problem, mate?
Very driving mode. It's driving mode.
Okay, it'll burn up. We either have to fix it or turn it off.
Okay, you hear Kevin Durant and Didier Tays there. Didier saying the car is drivable, but some kind of problem on the front end of this Dallara, guys.
Interesting. I mean, somewhat similar to what's going on or what went on with the number 16 entry. Anytime you get problems down in that area where it can get down into the foot box, that is of great concern. And problems continue, it appears, for Tony Stewart. They think it may have just stalled it. They've got him. That's a remote battery unit, I think they have, and they're trying to save the battery when they're trying to start it. So, see if we can see what happens here. Actually, now they're looking at the back of the car, so this could be even more severe than a simple problem with a stall and getting it refired. They're talking intently right now with Tony at this stage. You know, we remain under full course caution, and we would anticipate pits are fairly busy. And right in front of that car, that number 27, Duran Lista entry, sits parked, remained as well. And Calvin, understand you've gotten hold of Didier.
Didier, what seems to be the problem?
Well, step by step, we lose the power steering. It's very drivable, but you know, I could continue like that with no problem. But we took the opportunity of the yellow flag to try to fix it and not to lose too many times.
There's a similar problem going on with the 16 Dyson car. They're getting fluid actually into the foot box. Is that the same scenario for you, or has it just failed?
No, at least I'm lucky it's on the fender.
How's the car running? It looked like you had a really strong pace going. Were you being disciplined, or were you flat out?
No, I'm just taking care of the gearbox and the engine, and so far everything's fine except for the power steering.
Okay, good luck the rest of the way, mate.
You know, Didier Tays, the remarkably talented Belgian, is phenomenal, because I don't know that there's anybody better at endurance racing, but when you need a quick lap out of somebody, Didier somehow can deliver that on demand as well. It is an amazing talent that he has indeed. Under full course yellow, there is the onboard shot from a parked Lola Porsche.
Gene Gregor still sitting there in pit lane, and seemed like Tony Stewart actually stalled a couple of times. Now the engine won't fire up. Any more information, Johnny, other than the fact the car and engine won't fire right now?
I've no idea. I mean, it's quite easy to stall. I actually stalled it, but fortunately I got on the button, it fired up. Tony stalled it, and it fired up, and he stalled again. And I think it overheats, and the heat soaks in, and then anything can stop it from firing up. So it's a shame. I mean, it's a long way to go, so it probably won't make any difference, but it's a shame anyway. I think we're running third, so...
Obviously, it's happened under caution, so it may save you bacon a little bit. But tell us about your first run. I believe this is your first run in a prototype car, and you seem to be having a pretty good race out there this afternoon.
Yeah, I'm not particularly happy with myself because I don't think I read the traffic very well, and I had Eric van der Poel in front of me for a while, and I was quicker, but I actually ended up going a bit too quick because Max slowed me down. And obviously this is an endurance event, and I've got to be aware of that, but I'm learning as we go. Over one lap I can do the speed, no problem, but judging the traffic, I've never experienced anything like it. It's just unbelievable.
Compare the different chassis out there. Have you been around the Dallara this weekend, been around the Riley and Scott, the Ferrari? Where is this car, the Crawford, have its strengths around Daytona?
Well, we were short shifting a lot. I expected us to be quicker than the Ferrari on the straight, but Eric was actually slightly quicker than me. The car just feels probably better than the Ferrari anywhere. The Riley and Scott haven't been around. The Dallara, I think it was Didier just came up to lap me at the end, and it didn't seem too bad, actually. I think maybe he's got slightly better traction than us, but that was all.
All right, mate, thanks for the info.
Thanks.
Oh, so a pile-up. That's down at the exit of the kink.
A grand carambolage under the caution flag.
You got it in. I love it. Yeah, I don't know exactly what caused it. We'll try and find out, but you have to think the old accordion effect. Somebody going a little bit too quick, checked up, got away from them, and as you said, everything broke out behind them there.
Also remember, half of them are on cold tires probably. That's going true. Into there, and they all charge in and suddenly stop and they go, oh dear, and then
it's
all locks up.
Something else to mention, by the way, once we go back to green, 4 cars apparently going to get stop and go penalties for passing the pace car, which is a huge no-no. The number 3 GTS front runner, the Jag, the number 8 SRP2 pole sitter and leader, the Nissan Lola, the number 8 machine, the number 33, which of course is the Ferrari in GT that's been having so many problems with the tire, and then the number 82 American GT machine. And so they're going to expect all of them to come in for a quick stop and go once we get back to green. Now, field has come out and funneled through the chicane, and we do anticipate the green flag coming up. So at this point, here we're going to go quickly to the onboard of the number 90 car and see what happened. And that's exactly it. Somebody checked up in front, the accordion effect, and already cars in the grass.
There's already cars out there, and he just went to join them. There you see the Marcos in front of us.
Boy, Rick Corelli, great reaction here. He must be a good 30-40 feet off of the track here, just trying to save it. So now we're watching the pace car. Lights are out, so I think we maybe want to eavesdrop here if we can and listen in to Mark Raffoff, race director for Grand Am.
Green flag, green flag.
And of course, they had their stop. And this right now, David Brabham, and just a couple of cars in front, the traffic, is the number 36 machine of Guy Smith. There it is, that long white flat deck. And that is, in fact, for position right now. And not that far in front of them is Elliott Forbes Robinson leading in the class. At this stage, our top 4 cars are covered by some 14 seconds. Let's enjoy the sound of a V12 Ferrari in battle.
About to take the lead momentarily.
Well, I don't think he's going to take the lead yet, David. He's a bit further back than that. He's going to overtake that guy, if I may correct you, Osborne. David's 4th, I think. He's 3rd. He's just going to get by Smith and Matthews. He's got to catch up Rob Dyson, who's actually driving car 20 in the lead.
By the way, there's the number 2. They got it started, and Tony Stewart leaves the pits, but right behind him coming in is the number 27. Freddie Lienhard, and apparently when they left the pits they were running too quick, exceeded the speed limit. And for the number 3 Jaguar, Paul Gentilozzi goes from bad to worse. I mentioned that they were going to have to stop because of passing the pace car. They did, but when they made their stop, it was because now they also exceeded the speed limit down in the pits. They were running over 70 miles an hour. The limit is 65, so a stop and go for Gentilozzi, and they're out and away, as is Lienhard. So penalties now served, everybody being a little more circumspect in terms of their speed. And Freddie Lienhard comes back to join the duel. But we now have Brabham sitting in the 2nd spot overall, and officially some 7 seconds behind Elliott Forbes Robinson, and that's more a factor of traffic than anything else. The high banks of Daytona. All over the back of him right now. This happened just a couple of minutes ago. Obviously David Brabham's heart in his throat. Heading in, there's Rob Dyson, and behind him we're going to be watching right there. That's the Downing Motorsports car right in front of Brabham.
Boy, I'll tell you what, old David got on the binders there very quickly. There you see it from on board. Look at the speed with which that kudzu spins around there.
He locked up the rears. I don't know if he missed a gear and chunked it in the down change or what, but
I'm glad you can't hear what David's saying, because I bet it's some exclusive Australian outback language.
Yeah, it probably is something like oh bother.
Well, I think you're right, man. The one thing is you noticed how quickly that Brabham was all over the back of that number 20 car. Now that whole margin's gone away as a result of that spin, and he's got to do it again. The problem is that right behind him now is Guy Smith, and the Riley and Scott is putting some pressure on. As we're watching this onboard shot, though, we'd like to welcome to the booth Anthony Lazzaro, who not that long ago got out of that beautiful silver number 8 Rand Racing, the Nissan Lola entry, currently running 8th overall, sitting on pole in the class, courtesy of a lap by Anthony Lazzaro. First of all, Anthony, welcome. And second, as you came in here, you saw the car come in for a stop-and-go penalty it was for passing the pace car. Terry seems to have dealt with that and is just back to work.
Well, I hate to see any penalties on our team and on Terry's part, but you know, mistakes happen, and maybe just a little bit of lack of concentration there. But no, he's doing a good job, and we definitely have a good shot at this deal.
Talk a little bit about why you decided. I mean, you watched Brabham duck underneath Dyson, and we have a new leader under braking into the chicane. And then to help Brabham out, look at that, he gets a lap car between he and Dyson, midpoint of the chicane, and that's exactly what he wanted. And now Guy Smith all over the back. He's going to take a run. He's going to move high. Now he's going to try and come down low, see if he can make the move, and drops low and does. So, boy, great battle here for the lead, and we are already 2 hours into the event. David Brabham back on point, and Smith now up into the 2nd spot, Dyson 3rd.
And David Brabham obviously driving, as we said on his opening lap, very cautiously. He was obviously watching everybody very carefully, avoided that spinning car, the number 63 car, very easy there. Obviously didn't let it rattle him as he dropped back like 7 or 8 seconds from Rob Dyson, but managed to dust him up in the end. And of course now he's got the 36 car of Guy Smith to worry about, who is running very quickly here at Daytona.
Really fun car to drive. I mean, hey, Ralph, Jeff Kellner's chose to drive our car over the Ferrari, and you know he's driven those quite a bit, and I've driven some of those quite a bit, and that's a pretty tough choice.
That says something. And of course, you got Borchler and Rand, as you pointed out, a very, very good Ferrari club driver. Some good action here. When you got out of the car, though, I got to ask you, you mentioned that there was a lot of debris out there, and you were surprised at the number of people that were having tire problems in terms of cut tires. We took a look, and it wasn't always the right rear that you would suspect might get loaded up. We had inside fronts, we had the whole thing. What do you think's causing that?
You know, you come here, and I don't quite know why they don't have inside curbing in the road course and in the bus stop. And people cut these corners constantly, and all it does is make for a dirty one-line track. It's already one line through the bus stop right now. Just some simple curbing would help the situation quite a bit. I think it's people dropping wheels. I think when there's a lot of traffic, you're putting the car in places you normally don't have to put the car, you know, up on the high side. And, you know, just like what happened here with the Saleen, I mean, that right there is going to drag some more stuff on the track. It's going to damage
It makes it very difficult in the dark, too, when you can't see it and you're coming up to lap people and you have to go into it, or they have to go into it to get out of the way. And, of course, they're loath to get in there. They don't want to get in there.
That Saleen, by the way, was the leader of the GTS division, and here we see the number 56. That's one of the GT cars of Drudy Rosa and Alex Caffey, and that's one of the cycle cars that really I thought might be a car with an opportunity to win, but they've had their problems. Meanwhile, Butch Leitzinger now comes streaming up underneath those guys.
I have a feeling that the GTS car is really going slowly, having had that moment in the chicane. He's continuing on for the lap, but going very slowly.
So that, by the way, with that off, that's how close it is. Gentilozzi now back in the lead in the GTS division. One misstep by the number 51 machine, and that's all it took, and was able to slide through and pick up the lead here. So it's very close quarters action in virtually all of the levels right now. Anthony, wanted to say thanks so much for you coming up and spending a little time with us. Good luck the rest of the race. Good luck with your IRL program. Those cars got to be fun to drive. Look forward to watching you.
It's going to be a great year.
All right, you've earned it, my friend. And here's what happened to the number 51 car. Ooh, oh. Wow. On Monday, February 11th at 7:59 p.m. Eastern Time, Speed Vision becomes the Speed Channel. That's when the relaunch occurs. And of course, Speed Vision has made a name for providing excellence in motorsports coverage, and it's only going to get better. Look at everything we have: Formula One, kart, FIA World Rally, Le Mans, NASCAR, ALMS, Trans Am. Everything you see there and much, much more. There is going to be so much coverage of motorsports on the channel dedicated to excellence in motorsports, Speed Channel. So make sure you follow that up. Now, number 50, problem there, that is the V8 BMW M3, and they have got a bit of a fire unfolding underneath the hood of that car. They've got the driver out, everybody backed away, and that's pretty serious. That was, the 08's in trouble. Craig Stanton behind the wheel of the BMW, the 08. That machine is one of the Marcos. That's Cor Oyser, who started the car. Looks like he just ran a little bit wide.
Like he's been scattering cones far and wide.
David, in the last, I don't know, maybe half an hour, we have seen a slew of spins, cars off and the like. And of course, Anthony was talking about the debris in the chicane, but it seems to be happening everywhere. Here's what happened to Oyser. Watch right here. Coming into the turn. Oh, he actually, oh, wow. He dropped the wheel on the approach, didn't he, to the right
he looked
side.
It big time. You know, I'm wondering if, we've already said that Goodyear and Dunlop are carrying the load of all the tires this year. They've come with just a couple of compounds. I wonder if this temperature change has really caught them out. And the track temperature has dropped. Yesterday, it was up hovering around the 100-degree mark, the track temperature. This afternoon, it's got to be down around the 70 to 80-degree mark. Probably makes a big difference.
I would think this is the car that was second in GTS. Remember, we had a replay just as we went to the break about what happened to him over the chicane, and that wasn't so much agricultural driving as mining.
Boy,
he was peeling up an awful lot of earth, and they're very concerned at the front of the car. You start packing in dirt, debris, grass, and the like into the front of a car where all of the radiator ducting is, and brake cooling ducts, oil cooling ducts.
Oh, yeah.
That's a severe problem. Let's go back and take a look at it. I mean, this car seriously got the nose down deep, got forced a little wide, runs deep. Now watch here. Boom, boom. And I mean, that just loads up so much stuff. And just
of the aero effect around the car, a lot of that gets sucked right into the cockpit, down around the driver's feet. It's unbelievable. Calvin, this car has got to be a mess.
Well, it's certainly very dirty. As Peter McLeod behind the wheel. He's been out of racing for a few years. He's really a great driver in Formula Ford 2000. We covered that series a few seasons ago, and Peter was really a standout there. They're cleaning out the front grills. There you see Peter behind the wheel and being very patient, but there's seemed to be some damage to the rear end. The crew is really going to work looking for things around the back end of the car and just really trying to clean the car out with all the dirt and debris. But other than that, I don't see any major problem, no major obvious bodywork damage. I think the car is just loaded up and they're trying to clean the thing out, because 5 minutes now spent can really save you a lot more time later in this race.
It must be pretty stoutly built at the front there, because that thing, as you say, wasn't just doing a bit of agriculture, it's practically digging a hole to China there, and it just really hit the ground hard. It's a miracle it didn't rip that whole nose piece apart, and it looks fine.
Interesting, while they're at it, they're also going off checking over the other rear tail lights, apparently, and that whole bodywork panel looks pretty loose. So that car got definitely rattled as it ran wide and got its nose and apparently much more of the car down into that very, very rough area on the exit of the track. So we're going to take a break. David Brabham out front here at Daytona. Intensity of the competition in the Rolex Grand American Championship. Here is the battle for the lead. Now, of course, if you win here at Daytona, you get a watch. If you win the championship in your class in the Rolex Grand American Series, you get a Rolex watch. And you watch what the cars and the drivers go through, tells you just how valuable and special those watches are. This is the battle for the lead. Brabham has it right now, but it's been another one of those seesaw situations, David. In certain spots, we see that Brabham is able to draw away. In others, we see that Riley and Scott able to close up. And, of course, traffic here always playing a role. Brabham's going to get around somebody here, and they left the door open enough. And we believe that Scott Sharp that is in chase mode. But, boy, did he get a run, but he's going to, right there, traffic. Nice job by Brabham. Use that car as a pick.
Scott Sharp, of course, incredibly experienced road racing driver, Trans Am champion. IRL champion on the pole at Indianapolis just last year.
Won here at 86.
Tremendous CV he's got, and of course comes from a great racing family. His father Bob raced for a ton of years before him in SCCA club level and at national club racing. So comes from a good racing background and certainly putting it to good use today, giving old David Brabham, who also comes from another strong racing background family. 3 brothers that raced, father that raced, and having a terrific dice, these two. This is what you call dicing with very, very, very controlled aggression. I mean, these guys know there's still another 21 and a bit hours to go.
And right here, there's that scenario. They get clear of traffic. Brabham eases away just a little bit. But then Sharp, of course, when Brabham gets held up a little bit in traffic, Sharp all over him. And that car getting in pretty solid under braking, too, isn't it?
It's very solid under braking. But, of course, the other thing, too, in this race with 73 cars on this 3.5 mile track, you sure as heck don't stay away from traffic for long.
No. Now let's watch here up on the banking, and there's nobody in front, at least for the next quarter mile or whatever that they're going to get into in terms of being blocked. And boy, once they hit the banking, that Ferrari draws away just a little bit.
Well, I think what you have to remember is the fact that dear old Ferrari was designed in 1994, and it's been gradually developed over the years, but not much by the factory, which is very sad. All they're interested in is in Formula One. Whereas with the car right behind it is the latest Riley and Scott high-tech car, the latest heaps of downforce, and that's why, of course, they get onto the straight in the Ferrari with its sleek aerodynamic shape does seem to get away a little bit.
The compromise, and we see that so often in this car, as you point out. The original Riley and Scott, that was their whole purpose, was to design it to be very good on tight street courses and the like. They've massaged it a little bit to open it up a bit, but still makes a lot more downforce, as you said, than this Ferrari. But that Ferrari V12 revs so high, and boy, when it gets up on the power band a little bit, there's some serious snap that it delivers.
Going for it every lap.
Somebody just overcooked the chicane there and is wisely skipping it because Sharp dove underneath them. And I was going to point out here that at this stage of the race, when you start hitting traffic like that, to give a plug to the corner workers, to be honest, because they're out there waving their arms into absolute
tiredness with the blue flags, and you really hope that the overtaking driver sees it and that the driver being overtaken understands it, so that it opens up a little bit. Now we're back on board for a moment with the number 8 SRP2 being driven by Terry Borchler. The reason why, a Zippo fast race lap. He just set the fastest race lap of the day thus far in the SRP2 category, and so he gets a Zippo fast race lap, and a nice job by Terry Borchler. Not a big surprise. He's pretty talented driver.
I'm a little bit surprised, because don't forget, this is the first time that Terry Borchler has ever driven a car like this, one of these open prototype types of car.
Was Terry just gesturing to somebody over there?
Was he saying there's 1 minute to go? Oh, no, there's the Ferrari.
Oh, he's pointing him through.
Yeah, very wise. You have to be so alert. Terry's very professional. I raced with him, against him, and he's one of the best drivers that up-and-coming drivers out there. Very intelligent man.
Sports cars have been a part of the racing landscape at Daytona since the days of speed trials on the beach. American and European sports car drivers were more than willing to put their best efforts against the American stock cars in a race against the clock. When the new Daytona International Speedway was built, sports car racing was not forgotten. One of Speedway founder Bill France Sr.'s closest friends was the Jazz King, Paul Whiteman, and Whiteman was quite a sports car enthusiast. When the new Speedway was completed in 1959, Whiteman, a Speedway board member, helped establish Daytona as a hub for sports car racing. In their first year of competition at the track, sports cars raced on the high banks in a counterclockwise direction, the opposite of their stock car counterparts, a direction that would change the following year. Whiteman helped secure national and regional SCCA events for the new Speedway and brought in international endurance racing with the 3-hour Continental at Daytona in 1962. The international race was extended to 24 hours in 1966 and established itself as one of the premier sports car races in the world. In 1992, Rolex became the title sponsor of the Endurance Classic and further elevated the status of the event. The combination of the world-famous watchmaker and the internationally famous Speedway with the most prestigious endurance race in America have given the Grand American Road Racing Series a great platform to open its season. Some fitting Jazz King music. By the way, we've had a couple developments. The number 83 second in GTS machine has lost a right front wheel. There in the pits, you see there that Oliver Gavin Ollie getting on board the number 16, Riley and Scott from Dyson Racing. So that stop unfolding. And just a minute or two ago, we had a very routine stop from the race leader at that time, number 13, David Brabham, in, fuel, tires, and right back out. Of course, that is the leading Ferrari. And we have one of our GTS Vipers, a little problem there. But talking about Ferrari has been leading here for a while. Will give up the lead at this point, and that now gives the lead to the number 36 being driven by Scott Sharp. But of course, in 1964, a Ferrari was the mark that won here in the hands of Pedro Rodriguez, and this year's Grand Marshal, Phil Hill, and we'd like to welcome Phil to the booth. Lead in the AGT division. We're on board now, the number 90. That number 29 is actually back just a little bit. They're chasing their team car, which is that little dot up in the distance. The two Fleece Motorsports cars right now going after the battle in the lead in AGT. That's Corelli, who is chasing the 09 entry right now, and that is Doug Goad behind the wheel of that car. Of course, one of the two co-champions in the American GT division in the Rolex series last year.
The 29 car, of course, that we just passed is the Herb Hare Darren Brassfield car, which started off on the pole. They must have been, there we see it coming to the picture now, they must have run into some sort of problem.
Well, and just the way that it was sort of caught in between those two Fleece Motorsports vets, it looks as though that car may be having a little bit of a problem. It just doesn't look to be running at the speed it was earlier.
No, it definitely looks to be off the pace.
Dyson getting out at this point, and so it looks like a driver change unfolding there. Phil, I want to thank you so much for coming up, spending a little time with us. We really appreciate it, as well as watching and reading about you throughout your great career. And I have to tell you that I went up against your son Derek once before myself, and I was humbled. It was a ping pong game in Sam Posey's basement, but he kicked me, just kicked me.
Well, I hope that he keeps on kicking lots of people.
As do we. Thank you so much once again. And the number 2 Crawford is in. We're going to step away, and we will be right back to Daytona, where Phil Hill, once again, Grand Marshal here at this 40th anniversary of this wonderful event. Mark Raffoff, as the pace car is about to be, or has just been dispatched.
Hood off at 08.
Copy, yeah, it's sitting up in the high groove just at the beginning of the flat part of the straightaway pace car. Just stay to the left. We got to get them together so the guys can get by and get up on the truck and get it.
That's what he was talking about. That was up at the exit of NASCAR 2, and a couple of close moments. Watch this. The debris is there. That piece of bodywork has come off. Some of the GT cars that tend to run a lower line, no problem. But watch what unfolds here when some groups of traffic come up to this piece of debris. It's pretty dicey there. A couple of the cars able to sweep low. If you've got a clean line of sight, you can make the move, but it's pretty iffy here. Now, there's one of the vehicles. They've got the pace car. The field's got the pace car has them under control, so they get that cleaned up. Oh, and Leonhardt's in. We are officially 2 hours and 26 minutes in, so this looks like a routine stop, Cal.
Yes, it is, Greg. A lot of the teams actually taking advantage of this full caution period. The 74 car is in. Actually, Wally Dollenbach Jr. jumped out. It's going to be Brock Simo jumping into that machine, and Freddie's going to do a double stint here. I think he particularly enjoys the daylight hours. I'm not sure if he's a big fan of the nighttime hours, so they're going to try and get him some time while the light is still good, but they don't believe this power steering issue that they had is going to be too much of a drama. I spoke to Kevin Durant between stops, and he said, no, we actually ran the car without power steering here in November, so the boys can do it. He said, ideally, we want it on, but looks like a routine stop, and Freddie's back underway.
Freddie has spent a lot of time in these cars. He is such a devotee of sports car racing at this level, and of course was instrumental with the Lista team in putting together the Ferrari. And of course, then when they decided they needed to have a little bit more development on the engine, they put the Judd in the back of the team's Ferrari, and they continue with this. Now, that's number 2. That's Tony Stewart in the Crawford under control of the pace vehicle, but had a bit of a moment right before the yellow came out. There was that battle essentially for the lead in class, and there goes Tony around right in front of them.
It looks as though he had a bit of a moment on his own, actually.
That was the International Horseshoe, and luckily he didn't stall it. Obviously, he stalled it a couple of times in the pit, so he knows how to keep the thing running now. But as you and I know, Derek, these things are very, very difficult to get going.
Well, I think he had just recently come out of the pits, and what it may have been cold tires, and he just got a little too much throttle coming out of the Horseshoe.
Well, actually, being out there right now like that is really good experience for him, because he's actually can really bed himself in these conditions, you know, with the fresh tires, get them bedded in, and you feel much more at ease when it all goes green.
And race leader number 36, Scott Sharp, in the Elan Motorsports powered Riley and Scott. And Calvin, doesn't look like we're going to see a driver's change.
No, I think Scotty's going to stay in here and do a double stint, and this looks like routine. They're going to the fronts first, going to the back side here. Actually nearly got clipped there with a camera crew, but everything's good. And Scott is really doing a great job here. The team is pretty confident with this car, and it must be probably ironic for David Bradman to be out there and have the power plant that's built by his boss, Don Panos from the ALMS series, giving him a hard time with Scott Sharp behind the wheel. But this new Riley and Scott, this is run in the factory. The guys are very keen to have a good showing here. Scott's backed up as routine, just trying to make some room for him, and he's back out of here.
With Scott's success recently in the IRL, and well, first before we get into that, let's go down to Guy with the Jaguar.
The Jaguar's coming. Paul Gentilozzi behind the wheel. They're changing all 4 tires and adding fuel. And Scott Pruitt was ready to get in. However, just on that cool-down lap behind the pace car, Paul Gentilozzi radioed in and said, you know what, I'm going to stay in and do another hour. So 4 hours in the car for Paul Gentilozzi to get that Jag up to the lead in the GTS division. Just a couple of pits further back. Should point out that Bill Rand has got into the SRP Nissan Lola. And Terry Borscher has got out.
Okay, thanks very much, Guy. And I'll tell you, I think you're limited. You can't drive more than 4 hours in a stint, so Paul's taking that right to the very limit here. And, you know, he had joked earlier about the fact that, you know, he'll probably be racing against Brian Simo in the Trans Am Series. He said, so all he gets to do is drive. He doesn't get to see any of the trick stuff.
Oh, we got a problem here with the Jag.
Yeah, we sure do. And we had an email earlier, by the way, asking about where the lights are on the Jaguar, because, of course, in Trans Am, it's just decals. Well, they've installed them down underneath where the actual lights would be on the street car. You can still see the decals there. They have put lights in, as they would need to do, of course, to run some 13 hours a night. A little chunk of debris on the track there. That'll cut down a tire in a hurry. That's turn 1 right there. So
yeah,
it's a little bit offline, but if you're trying to pass somebody around the outside,
yeah, that's not offline really. I mean, you're right, but
yeah.
it is. But I mean, everybody uses that bit of road.
Right online, isn't it?
Yeah, it's right online, because everybody's all over the place coming through there, because you're out braking and turning inside people and pushing.
And that isn't a piece of tape. I mean, that's a hard piece of plastic or fiberglass. And boy, that glass on a hot tire can cut through there.
Yeah, it's like a splitter with 2 bolts in it, isn't it?
A couple of rivets. Yeah, exactly. Those bolts go through those tires in a heartbeat.
But now's a good time to get that.
A heartbeat?
A heartbeat.
Okay, we're anticipating perhaps going green nonetheless. Let's drop in once again and try and listen in to Mark Rapoff.
We're going to bring in that tire from that Celine and that hood that we just picked up to the back of the pits. I don't know who the hood belonged to. Okay, pace car, bring it on home. Starter green this time. Green this time. Let's keep the pace of the leader there.
Don't they get the same feed as we get over there? I'd have thought he might have seen that bit of debris there. I'd want that out of the way.
One of the Lola Judds from John Field's Intersport team is the first to get the green flag. Highest place to those cars, though, right now runs in the 4th spot as we are green, and it's gone.
No, it's still there.
It's just out of
your picture.
We're just not. We have to pan right a little bit. Supposedly, and it's still there.
It's still there.
And there's one of the SRP entries. There's the number 13.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is.
The next lap, it could be quite a bone of contention.
Boy, once again, Brabham right behind that bright lime green Mazda Kudzu.
Yeah,
he spun right in front of him.
They've had a coloured weekend. They had an awful moment in practice yesterday when one of the drivers slid off the road into the tire wall, was backing out when he got hit by an errant BMW and really bent the back of it, and they spun twice in the race today.
Yeah, I mean, hadn't even really touched the tire barrier.
No, he was backing out, talking merrily to the crew as he got punted up the back, and it really damaged it.
Riding on board here with Brabham, and this is that traffic we're talking about. The short run here, now the left-hander, known if you count the corners as turn 6. That's one of those Marcos Mantis cars. It's a GT car off to your right. Unique look to those machines. And then there's the GTS variant, which is just wider and a bit more powerful. We would expect now that Brabs, if he can hang high here, ought to be able to get run, but I think he got held up pretty bad coming up onto the banking.
You have to, you see, David right now is driving terribly brightly because he doesn't want to make a move and cause an incident. He's got the Riley and Scott right behind him, but he knows he has the legs of it on the straight, and he has to get away on this infield.
Whoa. This is the battle for the lead, folks. Keep that in mind as well. So Sharp was hoping to be able to take advantage of that little bit of a moment. Couldn't quite get it done. They've had a checkered day. That's the Charles Morgan, Rob Morgan, Stephen Richards, and Andy Richards. Bet have had a couple of moments out there as well. Got away with it again.
Well, they also started at the back, if you remember. For some reason or other, they got put to the back of the field. So they've had a very checkered day.
Long day indeed. So it looks like they're just waiting for a gap. They're going to get back on track.
Well, look what I found here in the historic paddock at the Daytona 24 Hours for the race tomorrow. This car is actually going to run here at Daytona. But when it was seen in America, it was actually in the BF Goodrich colours with Jim Busby driving and his team. Hence, it had the central single big engine turbo in the back. The colour I'm more familiar with, of course, is these Rothmans colours. The Rothmans Porsche team, which I was so fortunate to have been part of back in the mid-80s, along with great drivers like Al Holbert, Hans Stuck, Stefan Beloff, Jackie Ickx, Jochen Mass. Many of them drove this fantastic car, and it won a lot of races. It holds a very special place in my heart.
Well, that race I was alluding to, Jarek, that they ran on Friday was a 90-minute enduro, and I mean, they had some of these cars out there, and they were running a full song.
They were quick. I don't know if I dare say how quick, but the Mercedes was some 4 seconds quicker a lap than we're running out here today. So it just shows you how quick cars were in that era.
Well, of course, that Mercedes was absolutely an extraordinary thing. 5-litre V8, twin turbo, massive horsepower, huge torque, very slippery, a lot of ground effect. So an absolute dynamite car, but of course incredibly expensive.
We were watching, by the way, obviously here's the battle between, over the lead between the Risi Ferrari and the Alon Riley and Scott. But we were watching that pit stop where Paul Gentilozzi has elected to stay in the car. And one of the things we're wondering is how long you're allowed to stay in the car in terms of time in a row. We thought maybe we'd try and check in with, again, race director Mark Raffoff. Mark, what is the regulation on that? I mean, Gentilozzi, if he goes to the end of his stint, is going to be pushing almost 4 hours.
Yeah, the limit is 3 hours with a 1 hour break. So he's going to have to come in early.
He's going to have to get out a little early in that.
Correct.
Now, what about for the entire race distance? You've got 3 or 4 drivers per car. Is there a maximum you can drive in the entire event?
Yeah, there is. You can do the event with a minimum of 2 drivers. So obviously, if a guy wanted to, he could drive 3 on, 1 off, 3 on, 1 off. But that isn't really physically possible. Hence the reason why most of the drivers have 3 drivers or 4. This track is too physical for them to do that.
All right, Mark, appreciate it very much, and hopefully we'll be able to drop in on you again and ask you some of these great technical questions. Meanwhile, let's get down to pit lane where Guy Hobbs, I believe, has found one of the Simo twins.
I certainly have. I found Brian, who was waiting for when Paul does eventually give up that seat. We were just talking, first of all, about the time limit. Mark Raffoff has just told us it's 3 hours at the most, so Paul is going to have to come in early. But the question I had for you is, how annoying is it for you to be standing around, you're 4th in line, and have to wait to get in the car? It looks like it's going to be after supper before you get in.
Well, you know, the anxiety is a bit much, but, you know, we got all the way through tomorrow. You know, I'm here to do my part, and it looks like I won't be eating dinner tonight.
It's kind of funny that you would team up with Paul Gentilozzi, because you two have had a great rivalry in the Trans Am Series, racing against each other.
That rivalry's made me a better driver, you know, and now that's going to hopefully make us a better team. So, you know, I have all the respect for this Jaguar, this Rocket Sport Jaguar and Johnson Controls race team. I can't wait to get in the car.
All right, we'll wait to see you in the car. Scott Pruitt's due to get in next, though.
Yeah, Scott Pruitt will get in next, and he'll probably run 2 stints. And then our teammate Michael Lauer will get in for a stint or 2, and then I'll take the night shift.
All right, good luck to you, Brian.
There is that number 3 Jag, Paul Gentilozzi, doing yeoman duty.
Well, he's going to have to come in, and he's really going to have to come in about 14 minutes.
You know, and it's interesting too, because a lot of people have, you know, well, that's a Trans Am program, and you know, he's used to running an hour, hour and a half, maybe tops. Is he capable of staying in the car? You know, he's not exactly super young anymore. He's doing an absolutely brilliant job, and he hasn't lost any time out there either.
I mean, Paul is a real professional. I think he does an excellent job. He's got a wonderful team around him. He said already Rocket Sports is probably the best team in any formula right now. But I have to say that I think the only thing I would criticize is that I, as a team manager, would always try and get all my drivers driving before night, because I think it's pretty tough for these guys to get out there and drive at race speeds, as you know, in the dark. And if poor old Simo has to get out there in the dark, it's pretty tough on him.
That's the other thing too, is they stopped just a few minutes ago under that last caution, knowing full well that he's going to have to stop again in about 25 minutes after he got in it. That would seem like a funny stint to me. That would have been the ideal opportunity to put the next driver in, it would seem to me.
Yeah, so he's got to drive it flat out, and that's what he's doing. He's a very capable young man, being a Formula 1 test driver, very talented driver, never really had the brakes at the right time, but he's getting them in the United States.
But of course, 10 laps in a race like this, I mean, obviously it's a lot if everybody else keeps going, but we've had a lot of trouble from the front runners. Practically every single one of them has had a problem of one sort or another, power steering or whatever. All it needs is somebody in front of him to stop for 5 or 6 laps, and boom, there he is right with me.
Well, that's one thing that has been proven since the inception of long-distance endurance racing is you can't give up. You have an early problem, because who knows what will befall those in front of you as the race unfolds.
The Grand Touring class, GT as it is known in Grand Am, is made up of basically production-based cars. We'll see the Mazda RX-7, Corvettes, Ferraris, the Mosler, and in this case, the BMW M3. But as you can see, it is certainly tricked out to be a fully fledged race car. Running up to a maximum of 6 litres, these cars have a slight advantage in a 24-hour race because they run much longer on fuel stops than any other cars, so they don't have to stop so many times. And they are a lighter car too, but they got full aerodynamics and they're good on braking as well. So watch out for the GT cars to be a contender at the Rolex 24 Hour on this 40th anniversary.
And there's the leader in the GT division. Now, of course, Guy did that report on one of the BMWs, and they've been quick. However, we saw one of the cars having a pretty substantial fire in the engine bay, so things not going all that well at this stage for the BMWs. But here's a little bit of a look in terms of the graphics here. Up to 6 liters max, but no turbos. And you can see the weight, 1,850 pounds to 2,500 pounds, depending upon the engine size. The fuel economy, a little over 26 gallons. But as he said, what makes these cars eventually, as we're riding on board with the number 66 Racers Group entry with Jörg Bergmeister, a very talented driver in this division, what makes these cars so good is as the race unfolds and you're able to run almost sometimes twice the distance between stops as some of the other cars. Near the end of the 24 hours, they're often up in the top 5.
And as you can see from the dashboard there, these cars start off life as a fully fledged road car. I mean, obviously we go through the whole gamut, including Ferraris, but they have to be like a road car to start with. You can put a roll cage in, but you can't modify them like a GTS car. It starts off as a tube frame car. These start off as a street chassis and then a street car.
Leads it. The white Riley and Scott is in second, and they are coming up on a pack of about, what, 10 cars of different classes that they need to work through. The Riley and Scott, so much grip, so good in traffic on the infield, and here comes Sharp. Cuts down to the inside, but look at Brabs, just defends beautifully. Now he's got to try and thread the needle here, and these other cars are racing as well. Up onto the banking they go, and boy, Brabs might get hung up here, and Sharp's going to try it again. No. And once they get up on the revs here, that very slippery Ferrari, right here, there you see it, starts to draw away.
Just a little tiny bit.
Not as much as before this lap, because Brabs got held up just a bit getting on the power. Usually he gets just another 20 feet away. But of course, the Ferrari's so sleek in the air, and he's going to get into the chicane before him. Now this could help the Riley and Scott, because Brabs got to get by him before the next turn. And that's exactly what David wanted, was to get that brake so that he just brake. Oh, they don't put in the wall. There's no need for that Porsche to be up there. Although he's a very quick one, there's no need to be up there at all. But he didn't know that the car, the Riley and Scott, was right behind Brabham, you see.
He's not looking again.
But you are pretty busy as you go through there, I have to admit.
But don't they, I believe they get instructed that you need to stay low when you get up on the banking for that very reason. Now, there's a very interested observer of what just happened to Scott Sharp, and he's with Calvin down at pit lane.
Well, that's Robbie Gordon. He's going to be getting in this car in a while. Robbie, you look like you're champing at the bit, mate, to get in here.
You know, they're doing a great job. You know, Scott Sharp, he's hanging in there, and Guy Smith did a good job. You know, it's a 24-hour race. The most important thing for us is just survive. I'm going to get in next, try to make all the gears, make all the corners. Try to get 2 more hours out of the way here. We've got a long ways to go.
Must have some pretty good memories of this place. Your first road race was here back in 1990.